Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the Board of Education meeting dated March the 23rd, 2021. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Board Secretary in the following manner. A, posting written notice on the official school bulletin board at the Administration Building on March 17th, 2021. B, transmitted notice to the Courier Post and Philadelphia Inquirer on March 17th, 2021. And C, transmitted notice to the Clerk of Cherry Hill Township on March 17th, 2021. Okay. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and take a brief moment, if you would allow Dr. Malash, to make a quick statement on behalf of the Cherry Hill Public School District Board of Education. We stand with the district in condemning the violence in Georgia and all violence based on hate and prejudice. Okay, thank you. I will now kick it over to you, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Arroyo?
Here.
Mrs. Stratton?
Here.
Ms. Friedel? Mrs. Matlack?
Here.
Mr. Abadia?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz? Here. Ms. Stern? Here. Mrs. Tom?
Here.
Mrs. Neary?
Here. Okay, great. Thank you. That'll bring us to approval of minutes. For 5.1, approval of minutes, board work sessions, special action meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated February 9th, 2021. 5.2, approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated February 23rd, 2021. And 5.3, approval of minutes, special meeting, board retreat minutes, and executive session minutes dated February 24th, 2021. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack, are there any questions? Okay,
Lori, I have to abstain from the retreat minutes.
okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I've opened up the online voting. Mrs. Arroyo, I will note your abstention on the February 24th minutes. And you can vote on the rest. And we have a unanimous vote on the rest.
Okay, great, thank you. Next, we have a board recognition on our agenda, and I will turn it over to you, Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. So I am very excited that Dr. Kwame Morton Sr. is with us this evening, and that we, as the district and the board, have the opportunity to recognize him for something that he was recently awarded by the New Jersey Supervisors and Principals Association. Dr. Morton was recently named the Visionary Principal of the Year for the secondary level by the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association, and now means he represents the entire state of New Jersey. He is the best, most visionary principal at the secondary level, middle schools and high schools in the state of New Jersey. And now his name, his successes, his whole profile is being submitted at the national level to the National Association of Secondary School Principals for consideration for national recognition. So I am thrilled to present to you Dr. Kwame Morton Sr. So congratulations, Dr. Morton.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malash. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be recognized. Thank you so much, Mrs. Neary, and members of the board as well for the opportunity to be recognized. I'm really a simple guy. You know, I really truly enjoy being around kids. In my professional life, I enjoy it. my personal life. Everyone knows about the big bosom of kids, the cheaper by the dozen that we have in the Morton household. So, you know, I live it and walk it each and every day. I'm humbled tremendously to be thought of in this light. I think the biggest thing for me is that it's a great testament to the outstanding community that is High School West, an outstanding community that is Cherry Hill. I have fantastic kids and students who are full of life and exuberance. I have fantastic staff members that go above and beyond the call of duty for kids. And, you know, it's truly wonderful that our entire community is honored in that way. As I reflect on this and I think about things, I'm humbled to even be associated in the position in Cherry Hill. There are great things that are happening in Cherry Hill. Just a couple of weeks ago, I believe the state of New Jersey was recognized as the top state for public education in the country, K through 12, the top state. And whether individuals recognize it or not, our superintendent has been recognized as the superintendent of the year in the top public education state in the country, and now a principal as well. And it's not to say that I don't consider myself to be so great, and I know Dr. Malash is you know, feels the same, but it's just to say that there are great things happening in Cherry Hill, and this is a representation of that. So I'm humbled, I'm honored. Thank you so much for your recognition this evening.
Congratulations, Dr. Morton.
Congratulations. Thank you.
There's a wonderful article that was published online this afternoon by the Cherry Hill Sun, featuring Dr. Morton talking about the award. Goes a little bit more into his background, some things I'll talk about, because we will see Dr. Morton again a little bit later this evening. So congratulations, Kwame. We do have a certificate for you. I'll give that to you when I see you so that you can hang it up in your office, but well done, very well done. Thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Great, thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Morton. Okay, so next we have presentations, and we do have a presentation this evening, Dr. Malash.
Yes. So this evening, I'm very excited. If you can see, Mr. Bob Garrison is here in the boardroom with us. He is, let me just adjust camera here a little bit. There you go, Bob.
There we go.
So they can see you. Mr. Garrison is from Garrison Architects, which is our architect of record for a year now. For about a year,
Yes,
right?
yes, yep.
That Bob and his folks have been working with us here in the district. So this is a presentation that we have been eagerly anticipating, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sugars. I don't know if you want to say anything or just turn it right over to Bob.
Just turn it right over to Bob.
Mr. Garrison, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malash. And yes, it's been a year. How fast 12 months go? But we've been hard at work, and I'm really excited about showing the district board and the community the results of some of those efforts. And the cover page really sets the tone. It shows you all the different facilities. We'll be talking about a long-range facility plan this evening. In concert with Garrison Architects and our efforts, we also have some other consultants that the district has hired that we've worked with in order to develop this comprehensive program. There are environmental resolutions, the district site engineer, civil engineer, and TTI Environmental, who handle obviously the environmental concerns for the district. We go to the agenda before we start. This is a very, very typical exercise that I do as architect of record in many South Jersey districts. In fact, our firm is blessed to have over 70 districts as architect of record. The long-range facility plan exercise is encouraged by the Department of Education, and it's really conducted every 5 years. So yours was last updated in 2018 when the referendum came about. So it's nice to get an early start for that requirement, which would be 2023. Tonight's agenda, facility assessment. It's important that everyone understand the district facilities. What is an overview? How many acres of land? How many buildings? How many square feet? How many students are we in charge with educating here in Cherry Hill Township? It involved data gathering, because as a new firm, only been in the district a year, we needed to get up to speed, myself and my engineers, on what documents were available. So we did that. And then the facility evaluation itself, boots on the ground. I visited every single building, every single site. And I'd like to say, with few exceptions, I probably tried to go into every single classroom. And that was made possible because of the limited use of the facilities in the spring and the summer. Project prioritization. So when we go out and we look at the buildings, we look at what the needs are, how do we categorize them? How do we prioritize them? How do they match the Department of Education's eligibility for future funding, given the fact that the goal here may be to set the tone for a future referendum? So we have to have our eye on those different things. So we'll go with you through these levels of prioritization with you. They're very specific and very concise. We then created a master list of deficiencies or proposed improvements for each building and each site. We applied a cost to those facility deficiencies and site improvements based on the current bidding. Our office bids between 50 and 75 projects a year. I have cost estimators, and we try to do our best, especially with the rising prices and anticipated prices with the billions of dollars that are coming down from state government. I also put in here a proposed bond referendum. As you might remember, in the last referendum, there were certain times that a community, specifically 4 times a community, can hold a special election other than the general election. And then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So for the district overview, 22 buildings comprised of an early childhood center, 12 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools, the administration building, an alternative high school that we're sitting in tonight, as well as the Laurel Crest complex. The district maintains 360 acres at 25 different sites. Your total building square footage that is managed, heat and cooled, electrified on a daily basis is 1.7 million square feet. Quite an accomplishment throughout the community. And you see there the breakdowns. Laurel Crest, you'll note, has 3 buildings that we looked at for that particular site. So the data gathering. As I mentioned, first thing that we did was we gathered and scanned all of the records that the district had. These are all of the projects that were done over the years so that our office could establish a baseline for which to work, a baseline for which to do schematic designs and presentation works and some of the PowerPoints that you'll be seeing. And I thought it was notable at this point in time to kind of bring you up to speed on the different things that we saw from those documents and what's been done over the last 20 years. In 2000, all-purpose room additions were constructed at select elementary schools. In 2002, there was a district-wide exterior window replacement project. In 2004, there was toilet room renovations. In 2010, the district hired Miller Remick, an engineering company, to look at the electric service and distribution of that service throughout the facilities. In 2010, the district wisely took advantage of the local government energy audit program, and Concord Engineering, one of the 5 pre-qualified firms, did a local government energy audit. In 2011, there was district-wide HVAC rooftop replacements. In 2012, there was electric service upgrades. 2014 was part of an ESIP project, district-wide boiler plant upgrades. In 2018, of course, was the launch of the bond referendum program, Building a Solid Future. This was Bessica Associates work. In 2019, TTI, your environmental consultant, did a 3-year HERE re-inspection report. This was important because we were able to piggyback on that documentation and those tests that were already performed in order to establish costs going forward. And in 2020, again, smartly, the district took advantage, this time with TRC instead of a local engineering firm, to do another local government energy audit. This was done for all buildings. It gives us a great baseline for age of lighting and HVAC, and also conditions thereof of those items. The facility evaluation, as I mentioned, summer, fall, and into earlier this past winter, site and facilities tour, all buildings, all sites. I thank the staff at each of the schools who greeted me with open arms, had a laundry list of items that they wanted me to look at, which was very helpful, so we get up to speed about some of the needs at each of the buildings. We then did a comprehensive inventory of the facilities. We looked at expected and extendable life of systems. Sometimes we don't need to do a roof replacement. Sometimes we can do a restoration. Sometimes we don't have to replace the HVAC. Maybe it's a compressor that's bad, et cetera, et cetera. Then the district-wide facility assessment building program. That's what we're going to talk about this evening, is a result of all that work. We also look at enrollment projections. We have to make sure that we understand the adequacy of the educational opportunities in the schools. Are there any unhoused students? What are the capacities? Do we need additions? If so, where are they? Or do we have enrollment shift requirements? All of that data that is put into conceptual schematics. As I mentioned, we have floor plans and diagrams for every single school because we believe in pictures. Pictures paint a better understanding, more PowerPoint presentation, easier to digest when we're talking about additions, reconfiguring, or where we're working in a particular building or in a site. And the goal of those pictures, of course, is to document what is the proposed work and what does it look like. We then put our cost estimating hat on the proposed facility improvements, and we use our partners, Environmental Resolutions and TTI, incorporating that into one master plan. We start the presentations like we're doing tonight to the community, the administration, the principals, to gain public support of an eventual building program that gets rolled out. So when we go into the schools, what are we looking for? What are these prioritizations? And the Department of Education made this job a little bit easier for us because when they rolled out the Educational Facility Construction Financing Act in '98 and 2000 and had that $8.6 billion that districts could apply for help in facility improvements, they created 3 levels of concern. And they broke the school facility down into these levels. The first thing in level 1 is the most critical operational building needs. These include health and safety issues and program mandates, things that are required in the educational curriculum. Obviously, first and foremost is our essential building systems. We talk about it a lot. Inherently important in this day and age is the HVAC and mechanical systems, including ventilation, electrical, and plumbing. That also involves structural concerns, where they have building settlement, et cetera. Building skin, another high priority. Roof, windows, doors, masonry. Building code issues, are they in current violations? Do we have electrical issues or boiler issues or other code issues that need to be corrected as a level 1? ADA upgrades as they relate to site and building access. Also, when we move to the inside of a building, how are our toilet rooms? Are they accessible? What does that situation look like? Hazardous materials abatement, lead and asbestos, but also radon, if that's a concern from TTI. Security and communication systems involve public address, telephone, building entrance security, and obviously Alyssa's law compliance, which is now mandate. Site drainage. So site work is really divided into 2 categories. The state deems site drainage, existing problems that we have, ice and snow buildup, drainage creating building issues, but not in conjunction with new construction. That's a high priority because you'll see new site work as a lower priority. Elementary school playgrounds to meet obviously life cycle costs, but also safety, national safety codes. And then finally in level 1, the state deems specialized instructional needs. What about media centers, robotics, career spaces, STEM labs, highly specialized spaces or a level 1 priority for improvement and inclusion. In level 2, these were all the other existing building systems. Repair and replacement of interior finishes like floors, walls, ceilings. It also includes interior lighting, casework, furniture, and kitchen equipment. Site upgrades, sidewalks that don't deal with drainage issues, that don't deal with ADA issues, which is a priority 1. Those would be level 2, as well as renovating or new construction of capacity generating classrooms. Let's say there was an overcrowding situation and you needed additional general instructional classrooms. That was a level 2 priority. Technology infrastructure, the Department of Education had their own technology plan, and that plan does not include equipment, because you wouldn't want to finance equipment per se over a 20-year bond if that's the path that you were choosing. Level 3, the lowest priorities that they had were district-wide on-house students, again, an overcrowding, early childhood program. FES compliance means that if your kindergarten classroom wasn't 950 square feet, FES means facility efficiency standards, that you'd have to increase the size of the classroom to be FES compliant. Wasn't as important in their minds. Temporary facilities were discouraged because, again, of bonding, long cycle costs of having them to turn over. And then finally, athletic facilities. State government doesn't believe in high funding of athletic facility improvements. So after having that knowledge, we take that knowledge and we go out to all of the buildings and the sites in the district. And so for each of the buildings, there is a 150-page report that kind of gives costs in a little more detail. I'm going to go through the different grading criteria that we had and most common needs that were throughout the district. So with every single site, every single building, we start on the outside. So site improvements. The thing that we found most was ADA compliance. And I'm pleased to announce, and I'm sure the board members know this because they voted on the construction contract, that Woodcrest and West High School projects are underway in district dealing with some of those ADA improvements. And I'm going to mention that as we go along. So I looked at to create a master list, long-range facility plan, and the board and the administration have chosen some projects that are already in process. So site improvements, ADA compliance, site drainage, paving, signage, playground enhancements, all done in concert with ERI design consultant. New parking lot improvements. In a lot of cases, the parking was insufficient. The parking was aggravating some of the neighbors. So we came up with some designs to relieve that pressure on the surrounding community, especially at the elementary school level. Also circulation. Is there a better way to bring the buses in? Is there a better way in the future, now that we know we have to use our schools a little bit differently, how we're going to drop off and pick up, maybe through a multi-purpose room, et cetera, et cetera. Basketball court, a few sites have that. Paved play area reconstruction. Many of the elementary school sites have that, and the needs are there. New LED monument signage at each school. This is trying to standardize in district the messaging, making sure that the messaging is out, not only from a neighborhood standpoint, but also the larger school standpoint of events, of critical path items, of emergencies, standardizing all that. And it's something that's really gained a lot of traction given our concern about safety and security at our sites. Exterior, first and foremost, was roof replacement. Looking at the existing warranties, and the district has done a good job with some of the warranties. With so many buildings, 1.7 million square feet, there are roofing needs. Again, the district board has taken steps to solve that problem by the award of the Stockton project, which is underway this summer. Our office is also drawing up Johnson, Hart, Payne, and Rosa, 4 different schools which have some warranties that are expiring in some of the new additions. When we do our roof replacement, we assume that there's going to be some deck in a conservative manner. We do new insulation. A modified roofing system goes back with at least a 20-year warranty. Front canopy reconstruction. Not only reconstruction, but also in many instances to define the entrance of our buildings. The last thing we want in today's day and age is a visitor or delivery wandering around a school site not knowing where the front door is. And by having a clear, concise main entrance canopy with a security vestibule, you take that right out of the equation. It's very effective. Exterior door hardware frame replacement, not only an ADA issue many times, but also a security issue, obviously, with locking devices. Masonry repairs, just like your home, pointing, windows, caulking, window lintels, ethos on the facade, metal panels, drive it. So that's all part of the exterior renovations that we graded and looked at the various sites. Interior renovations, we moved to the inside of the building. Top of the list is the main entrance. Again, defining that entrance. Now that we defined that entrance, how are we safe in entering and exiting the building? Security vestibules. If the security vestibule can be recreated in the existing space, that's fine. But in many instances, the main office needed to be reconfigured, like Beck School and some of the others. This involves the principal office being renovated or relocated. In some cases, the multi-purpose room kitchens were disturbed. In most cases, the nurses' suite was going to be reconfigured. While we were reconfiguring the nurses' suite, we also brought that up to code. We made it 460 square feet. We made sure that it had a handicap bathroom. We made sure that it had a separate air system, which will be important going forward. Flooring replacement, obvious, classroom, main office, library, gyms. Vinyl composite flooring is a recommendation, something maintenance-free going back, or carpet tile if you have areas appropriate for carpet in your offices or your media centers. And then your gym floors. Are we using a synthetic floor? Are we using a wood floor like we have at the middle schools and the high schools? That was also discussed and looked at. Classroom cabinetry along the corridor walls. In the old days, we had all this cabinetry on the corridor walls, especially the elementary school. And we find over time that it just collects dust and it doesn't really serve the purpose. The doors are broken. It just doesn't function that well. A lot of my districts are going to mobile units. We take that off. We go to a unit that has some open webbing so that it can be clean and also is more portable in nature, something more flexible, user-friendly, and maintenance-free. Corridors are big because not only do we want to change them for LED lighting and ceilings and paint the walls, but they are a raceway. They are a raceway for our new security, our new IT, our new PA, telecommunication system, security systems, hydronic piping, domestic water. They are the backbone of our schools. So when we talk about doing other projects, a lot of times the corridors get made over just because that's where we're going to be working to get those utilities to the classrooms. Classrooms folding wall partitions. I don't know, back in the 70s and 80s, very, very popular where they had the accordion folding walls in between the classrooms. The teachers in the audience would know that this is really not effective with regard to sound. So our proposal is that we remove those accordion walls in a lot of the elementary schools and go back with metal stud and drywall. It still allows you using metal stud and drywall to demolish it quickly and reconfigure the room because we don't go back with concrete block anymore. And that seems to be a good solution. Classroom whiteboards, we have some in district remaining chalkboards. We need to go over them with the whiteboards, but that's certainly retiring the chalkboards is a priority. Interior doors. A lot of us look at the doors and they say, well, they served us well in the 60s and 70s and the beautiful wood birch doors with the finish and whatnot. Well, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't fire rated and they need to be. They need to be fire rated. They need to have rated frames. All the doors need to have closures. They have to be ADA compliant. And most importantly, they have to have intruder software or hardware for security. Renovating hall, unisex, and classroom toilet rooms, not only from a finish and fixture standpoint, whether that's low consumption toilet but most importantly is ADA compliance, making sure that we do it right when we put it back together. Teachers Lounge, a lot of the teachers' lounges are original, they're a hodgepodge from donations, et cetera, trying to give them a responsible break space with sink replacement cabinets, finishes, and just generally renovating those spaces. ADA compliant interior signage, all buildings. It's required, obviously Braille, we know about it in a lot of the public buildings that we visit during daily lives. This is something that we put into the program. All-purpose room cafeteria, demolish the old stage, tripping hazard, ADA issue, et cetera, et cetera. Replace the finishes, new ceilings, new lighting, because those are our primary specialized spaces at our elementary school level. At our middle school and high school levels, we saw science labs that need to be renovated. When we have an opportunity to renovate a science lab, we also look at the curriculum. What are we doing going forward with STEM? What are we doing going forward with robotics? Do we need biology, chemistry, earth science, and physics? What else are we doing? So a lot of times we'll go in, we'll take 6 classrooms, and yeah, we'll have the 4 basics, but we'll go outside the box with the robotics, advanced manufacturing, or something for the other science disciplines. Same thing for libraries, right? Libraries, they're not libraries, they're instructional media centers. We want to make sure that they have interactive opportunities, they're teaching stations. A lot of time we do this with furniture. Think about going into a bookstore and having high tops with computer areas for the upper grades, soft seating, making it inviting for our students to study in there, quiet study rooms, glass partitioning, furniture partitioning. That's how you reinvigorate a lot of the libraries to instructional media centers. Gymnasiums, pretty straightforward. A lot of times it's finishes in the gymnasiums, new ceilings, LED lightings, bleachers, locker room reconfigurations, renovations. I enjoyed immensely walking through East and West and the locker room caverns down there. You've got a lot of locker rooms in both of those buildings, and some spaces that are in need of renovation. Elevators, either modernization, bringing them up to ADA compliance and current standards, and revitalizing the motor and kind of the systems. Also ADA compliance. Also in the proposal, I think a few additional elevators are appropriate because of the travel distance, especially over at West. Hazardous materials abatement, I talked about it, BAT, vinyl asbestos tile, that's what that is. Maybe it's under current carpet that you have, pipe insulation, plaster wall surfaces, et cetera, et cetera. On to the building systems. We all know what's most important here, and that's our HVAC systems. So in our classrooms, 830, 825 general instructional classrooms. There's an existing unit ventilator on the outside. Sometimes it has air conditioning. Very, very few instances it has air conditioning. It's usually heat only. New perimeter hot water, radiation book shelving, all buildings. Big, big part of the program. Also, in addition to our classrooms, because that's what heating and ventilates our classrooms, we also have split systems for our offices. We have air handling units, rooftop units, cabinet heaters in the hallways. All those are part of the improvement program. Exhaust fans, replacing rooftop exhaust fans. In fact, with the Stockton bid, 23 exhaust fans in that school are going to be replaced as part of the 8 rooftop units that we have. So already, again, in this particular need area, the district's taken steps, along with the fact that we're looking at Hart, Payne, Rosa, and Johnson in a similar fashion to do the newer addition roofs there in 2000, and obviously take care of the fans and the HVAC. Introduction of enhanced air cleaning filtration systems. What is that? Is that the MERV 13? Is that the bipolarization? Is that the UV light? Is that the combination of 2 or 3 or all 3? Is that the portable air cleaning unit? All of these things are what we're looking at and budgeting for. Replacement of pneumatic energy systems. Pneumatic energy systems is a bunch of tubes running around with air that used to control a lot of the equipment. The new technology today is DDC, digital control equipment. We have a laptop computer. We dial in, we can see the functioning unit ventilator in the classroom. You can actually see a diagram, the motor spinning, the airflow, the temperature, all the set points. You also know that if you're facility managing there, even remotely or at the school, that unit needs maintenance or that unit's not functioning. So you get an alert for these different things. In fact, if there's a snow day, you can turn the boilers off remotely from a distance. Dr. Malaj, if that ever happens again at 3 a.m. in the morning and you call a snow day, we can turn the boilers off with the new system. Kitchen equipment, something we looked at. In many instances, the equipment's been kept up with the food service provider. There are select pieces here and there that needed to be budgeted for. On the electrical side, security system, door access controls, closed circuit TV, upgrading and expansion of these systems. You have them at all the buildings. PA system, telecommunications clock, Alyssa's Law compliance. Enough said about that. Main electric service. In some instances, we want to bring in more power. Let's say the elementary school is going to get air conditioned. There may not be enough power with that older project and the new needs that we have. And when we bring in the power, we deal with convenience outlets. So we're able to get better distribution, not only for our lighting and our HVAC upgrades, but also providing more outlets because of the 21st century classroom needs. Fire alarm system, really down to a few schools. The district has done a great job in having those systems replaced out of their budget over time. Emergency generators, again, a lot of the schools have generators. Some of the select schools we're looking at upgrading those generators because they're small, they're 5 kW or 10 kW or 15. They need to be 100 to have food service IT and some other critical needs on top of them. Plumbing construction, replace domestic hot water heater, storage tank, modified pipe loop, or incorporate that into the boiler, and then replace water fountains. Now we go with the water coolers, the bottle fillers, very, very popular and very, very cost effective and sanitary to boot, getting away from a fountain, for instance. State funding opportunities. So other than the taxpayers, how do we help pay for these school facility improvements? Well, the biggest contributor, and you saw this in your 2018 referendum, was the Department of Education. These lists of level 1, 2, and 3 projects get funded by the Department of Education, called eligible projects. And that comes in the form of debt service aid. So there's a cost estimate for each of the schools. There's a state share, whether that be 30 or 40% of the cost of the projects in that particular school. And then that's financed over 20 years and the district gets debt service on that amount of money. The other programs that you have were the Board of Public Utilities. Well, the district's already taken advantage of the BPU by having free energy audits in 2000 and 2020. This allows the district to entertain direct install. It's one of the programs that they have where they can go into some of the smaller schools and we can get the lighting replaced or a select piece of mechanical equipment placed. You can't do it for the middle schools and high schools, but it's eligible program for your elementary. The most popular and most widely used program, other than the debt service aid from the Department of Education, is the New Jersey Clean Energy and Smart Start program. This is for HVAC equipment. So let's go back to the Stockton example. If we're doing 23 exhaust fans in the rooftops, we'll be able to go and get some rebate money, which is part of everybody's energy bill here and out in the community, back to the district. Also, LED lighting, when the district has taken on, Greg McCarty, his staff, and Don have taken on an LED lighting upgrade program that allows them to get rebate money back to the district to offset the costs. So we established a cost for each of these items, site all the way through the building system. And what I did here was I went back to my opening slide, level 1, most highest priority items. What is the cost breakdown if we took all of the projects to school? What does that look like? Well, the level 1 cost estimate in total for all of the projects, all of the sites, all of the buildings is $260 million. And it's broken out in the pie chart as follows. You can see there in the left. Electrical construction, $37 million. That's your PA, IT, security, upgrades. Your site work, remember, $33 million. This is not new site work. This is drainage, ADA, compliance issues. Roofing's a big part of the program at $32 million. Exterior renovations, $43 million. Interior renovations, $34 million. And then I broke the vestibules, security vestibules into 2 different pieces. The security vestibule total is $5.9 million, almost $6 million. It's made up of security vestibules that can be renovated. In other words, the main office isn't on the other side of the corridor. We don't have to build new construction in order to achieve a logical plan of entry and exit. That is 3.5. And then the security vestibules for those schools which don't lay out on the outside wall is about 2.4. The new construction that you see there, that 375,000, is that elevator that I was talking about at West, which will alleviate some of the travel distance. But the biggest need, with no surprise, is HVAC. HVAC is all the equipment that I talked about, unit ventilator, all the building systems. And that's generally absent boilers, because again, the boilers are still under warranty. They were done within a reasonable time period and are not in the program. So that's all of your air systems and your enhancements. And then a small need there for plumbing, which is your electric water coolers, or your bottle fillers, I should say, for $1.5 million. Then we go further and we break down, okay, level 2. Level 2, the overriding part of that particular priority is interior renovations. These are all of your finishes, your lighting, your casework, everything on the inside. HVAC in that category is limited at $1.7 million to kitchen equipment. So that's just the kitchen equipment, because at level 1, we took care of all the air systems. Electrical construction, that number there is simply exterior lighting. Again, electrical service upgrades, PAIT was all in level 1. And then site work. This is new site work, 1.7. This would be reconfiguring a site, parking lot expansions, circulation issues, et cetera. And then on the level 3, $47 million, this is the new all-purpose rooms. All-purpose rooms to equalize the district. Because as I mentioned in the history and data gathering, we saw that in 2000, there were some multi-purpose rooms built in district. This is to provide equalization of that. Also, some kitchen additions, expanding on these all-purpose rooms. TCUs, temporary classroom units, and classroom wing construction. Classroom wing construction means over at the high school, we're looking at demolishing portions of that and building some new specialized instructional spaces. And the total there is $47 million. So that gets you to a total program that we looked at with everything based on the needs, the estimates, the other 2 firms providing their costs of about $360 million in total. So we broke it down into those pieces. If the district were to proceed in the community embrace a bond referendum program, what I wanted to show you here very simply is that this is about a 9-month process. So let's take a special date of September 27th. Well, you really want to start that process 9 months earlier. That would be in January 22, submitting the documents to the Department of Education. The Department of Education needs to catch up with their personnel and staffing, and so that process is going to take a long time. The board, and then you'll see the minimum dates. The board has to approve a special election 60 days prior, filing of the supplemental debt statement. There's other 55 days for the planning board's publications. all the way down to the election day. And the four special election days are September, that's the last Tuesday in September, the second Tuesday in December, the fourth Tuesday in January, and the second Tuesday in March. We used to have a spring date, if you remember, back in April, when boards of education actually voted on their budgets and school board members and whatnot. That date has been moved now to November. So that's your new date. The problem with that is, and everybody looks at this schedule and says, how could you possibly have all the elections in one part of the calendar? September, December, November, if you wish, December and March, or January and March, and there's nothing in the springtime. Well, that's just the way the schedule works. And that causes a problem from an approval standpoint, because everybody's trying to get their stuff done for the late summer, fall, and early winter all at one time. And it leaves all of these months, I guess, for good planning. I put in there December 13th, 2020, and you can see the schedule there for that timeline. But again, generally speaking, from the time that you decide on the program, the time that you say, okay, Bob, put the projects into the Department of Education and go get that debt service aid that we need to offset the cost for the taxpayer, that's a 9-month process to election day. That also allows not only for the department to review the projects, but also the community to be informed with information sessions, et cetera, et cetera. Very familiar with that in the last referendum with presentations and documentation and different tax calculators and whatnot. So I tried to tonight give you a snapshot. It's a lot of information of what we've been doing in the last year. It was really a great opportunity for me to get the documents, walk all of the buildings, meet all the different stakeholders, be embraced by the principals, come up with lists of projects that can be considered going forward. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm not doing my job if we're not presenting some options and we're not putting projects out there that need to be considered and weighed one way or another. Maybe they're educational, the curriculum, their building need, their future health and safety need. All those different things have to be part of a comprehensive program. And so this is a great starting point for that program to be digested, torn apart, challenged, et cetera, and get to the end goal, which is a successful building program, because that's the only way that it happens with everybody buying in.
I would suggest that when the discussion comes on, if you three put your cameras on, but keep it on mute, that way people will be able to see. The same thing with yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. Were there any questions from the board members? I'm going to look so I can bring that up. Mr. Avadia?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Neary. Okay. So Bob, first, I wanted to be the first to really say thank you. I know you spent about a year with us in the buildings. It's impressive that you've been in every building, almost every classroom. I hope you learned a lot.
I tried to. I wanted that person to ask me that question, and I wanted to have that answer.
Okay, so room 112 at then. But
Yeah.
I guess so Bob, you know, it's been great, you know, working with you in committee and learning from you. Getting to this point was good. You know, we talked about things, we looked at things, we've done a great job of presenting that tonight. You have a lot of experience working with boards of ed, working on these programs. At a point like tonight, what are the types of decisions or input the board can give that's helpful for you as you kind of iterate this and push information back to us and do that kind of stuff? Sure,
and so the path forward. The path forward is really, now that I gave you the overview, there's 150 pages of detail that also supports this. And maybe what has to happen is that we need to go on a roadshow. We need to go out into the community. I love, we've had them all different names, task forces, community action committees, all different things, whatever you want to call it, key communicators. To take this program and start bouncing it off the wall. Because this program is me working in a vacuum, seeing all the different needs, and it has to have input. It has to be criticized. It has to change, and it has to get ownership. I do not live in the community. You all do. The principals do. They know the buildings inside and out. They've seen a snapshot of this, but they really need to embrace it and challenge it so that we can launch it on a larger scale.
Okay, great. Ms. Stern?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you so much. This was an extremely comprehensive presentation, and I think this is truly the full picture. And I think that's something that I know I really appreciate getting. It feels like exactly the direction we need to be in. I have a few just specific questions, and then also want to follow up a little bit more if you could make recommendations for kind of best practice, best experiences in terms of, you've worked in a lot of districts in terms of the community. So that could be the end of the discussion, but a few small questions. Regarding some of the specialized areas you talked about, when you talked about kind of nurses' rooms, et cetera, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about is we look to like, what are the buildings that our current and future gonna need? I know there are schools that have like kind of wellness centers. They've transformed, to kind of address some of the mental health needs that are coming up. The nurse's office, the modern nurse's office has become the place where kids who are feeling stressed go, or kids who are struggling with, an issue that's not just for the medical. So just wondering if that's something that's been thought about for this.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that you bring that particular point up, because I threw out there the number of 460 square feet. That's the state model for a nurse's suite. That number is going to get much larger because we're going to have separate spatial space to fulfill other needs. And whether it's the classroom that you're using right now, right, the COVID treatment classroom or whatever, those spaces are going to get larger. And in fact, the Department of Education in New Jersey, I think nationally, is looking at a different model for the nurses' suite. We're not going to have two cots next to each other, right? It's not going to happen. We're going to have private, it's like going to the hospital with people, 2 rooms, right? The new virtual hospital, everybody's got their own space. So I think that that's going to be the vision in the future, is that we're going to have individual treatment rooms. The nurses' suite's going to get a lot bigger. There may be multiple points of entry and exit, and there's going to be a whole process. And I can tell you the Department of Education is looking at it. Now, I made the comment of HVAC. So if I had some dollars to spend, let's say it's ESER money or whatever, first thing that I'm doing or recommending is I'm going into the main office and nursing suite and putting the ionization in and the MERV 13 filter that serves the nursing suite, right? The HVAC, most important. So that's also going to be part of it, right from the get-go. But it's interesting you made that comment. They're looking at a new model, and it's going to be bigger than 460 square feet.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So, and take again, kind of the idea of this, the kind of different space use and different needs of the students. We have 20% of our students have special needs in this district. It's a pretty high number. I'm just wondering in terms of spaces for some of the services that those kids are receiving, and I'm thinking probably more at the elementary level. That's where a lot of the sensory needs might be being addressed, or OTPT speech. I think some districts try to do the best they can, and sometimes those services happen in like an old closet, or an unused classroom, which is that's probably very unusual. It's probably mostly an unused classroom, but just wondering how that figures into some of the design that you're thinking about.
Sure. So my office was lucky enough to design the Bankbridge Regional Schools. So the developmental center down there, the adult center for transition, the Senate president's daughter attends and whatnot. So we learned a lot from those particular spaces. And what we find is in many instances, just putting a swing or something in the middle of the classrooms, not appropriate. It's that we need diversity, we need a lot of different things. And there's a great debate about, having students, and even at Bancroft, we did some work, or Larksville, I should say. So the debate is, what does that space look like? What's the supervisory part of that? A little closet with a one-way mirror, not so much. What is the mainstreaming in that? How do we bring that student into the classroom if that's all possible? The biggest problem is what you just said. It's an afterthought. We take an 800 square foot classroom because that's what we got left over. And we say, that's going to be special, self-contained special ed this year because that's the space we have. And it's kind of occupancy by default. Self-contained special ed classroom is either 400 square feet or 600 square feet. A general instructional classroom is on the magnitude of 850, 950 if it's, early childhood. So that's the biggest problem. It's an afterthought. In this program, we're taking some of those classrooms, we're reducing the size of them by reconfiguring and coming up with a more appropriate, smaller model to take care of that population need.
Thank you. And I guess just, I would like to understand I definitely understand the idea of a prominence of a main entrance, and I do think it's confusing in our schools.
Right.
Personally, I've spent a good pre-pandemic, spent a good deal of time visiting one of our high schools. And there's definitely two entrances. There's entrances for the visitor and then there's visitors and there's an entrance for the students really. And I'm still honestly, and I'm new to the board this year, so this is kind of new question, but I'm trying to understand the benefit of the vestibule because it's talked about a lot. So,
Sure.
How does that figure into being, because they're costly.
Yes.
So how does that figure into kind of benefiting the entirety when we look at our whole projects?
First and foremost, and you brought the point, we want to take any wild card or opportunity, that's not the right word, any opportunity away from ambiguity when you come up, wandering around, and because that creates a lot of tension immediately, and that's a problem. So that's why the focal point is generally adopted, because we want to focus them in on that, control that area. So from a control standpoint, the number one thing I think for me is why do we get visitors to the school? What is the purpose of a visitor coming to the school? And I had kids, they're older, but I know that they forgot their homework. I know that maybe they forgot their SAT card when they were in high school. I know that they forgot whatever. And I think that the best thing that can be done is to eliminate interaction. If they're coming to the building, how can we eliminate interaction with others and keep the main office staff safe and be secure? And that is simply having a mousetrap with a transaction window, which is simply go in, do your business, and leave. It doesn't contaminate, cross-contaminate. It's not a security breach. It's not anything. It's just in and out. That's why I'm a big proponent, and a lot of my districts are a big proponent of these security vestibules. In, out, no more, no less. Don't confuse the matter. Don't introduce people into the building where the administrators or staff have to be challenged and take away from their learning, distraction. So that's why, I guess if I had one answer, that's why the security vestibules are so popular. And I have districts doing them. I don't know, I created a list for you. There's 30 or 40 districts of mine that did them in the last 5 years.
Single point of entry,
Yeah.
that's the key. Being able to monitor the traffic, distribute the traffic, or not allow the traffic in, I think is the biggest advantage. And then if there is an issue or there is a concern, they're in an enclosed area, so that there's no getting into the buildings or having expensive issues.
The 9/11 Commission Actually, if you look at best practices. So let's say I have a blank piece of paper and we're gonna do a new school at Carusi. I did that for Mrs. Tom, but all right. But, you know, if I have a blank piece of paper, the principal cannot be on an outside wall. I have to have control centers and I have to have a security vestibule. There is no option. Like I can't say, oh, well, we don't know if we believe in that or whatever. If I give a new plan, like my Cumberland Tech School to DCA, it has to have that. So if they're mandating that from new construction going forward, they think it's pretty important at the state.
Thank you. And just so that last question about kind of engaging the community, kind of best ways to do that, most successful, true kind of stakeholder, robust stakeholder engagement. How would you see?
Bring the information to the people. It's almost like anything else. We can all sit and do PowerPoint, but you got to get this out into the community where they do. You have to make it convenient for them to give you input. Because if we sit here on a Zoom call and have 10 or 15 people in a community that has all the stakeholders that you have and thousands of votes, we're not gauging public sentiment. That's not how we're going to get it. Do I have an answer for the mail-ins? No, I think that's a whole trending, thing that we're going to have to deal with. I have in the past had big campaigns, information campaigns that roll out big websites and again, information that could be transmitted to parents and whatnot. You've got a large community here. So the challenge is maybe you take a couple schools close together and you go there. The other thing is facility tours. Nobody wants to do it, but they don't. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I can give them pictures of, this is the media center and this is a unit ventilator, it's falling apart and whatever. Okay, that's pictures. A lot of times opening the buildings up for tours, we used to do that all the time. And you'd be amazed at how you turn people around because they walk through and they said, well, I went to school here in 1969 and I didn't know you didn't do anything, Wow. So.
Okay, Ms. Arroyo?
Just a quick question around the 9-month time period. Does that also include what you were just talking about regarding like getting feedback from the community? Or is that leading up to that point?
The feedback of the community is important before we push the button to the Department of Education and submit the project. Because we can't submit to them for funding consideration without the board's approval that that's a project that's going to go forward. So we really can't have a lot of options there. Let's say all-purpose rooms. You have to decide that you want that in the program or not. It's not like you send it in, get funding or not funding for it, and then take it back off the vote. So it has to be vetted with the community prior to submission.
Okay, Mrs. Schultz?
Hi, thanks for all the information. Just a clarification on the roughly 360 million.
Yep.
Is it all three levels have to be approved, or can we do level 1, the 260 without doing level 2 and level 3? So, or are they like one has to work with the other?
The only case that I would say that a 2, that we need a part of the 2 if we're going to do a level 1, would be back to that HVAC. If we're going to do the HVAC, the IT, the communications, I need those ceilings and lighting that are in 2. So that would bleed into that little piece. But after that, pretty much everything can stand alone. And you can have multiple questions. You know that last time.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Garrison, I had a quick question before I went to Mr. Ovadia. Given the changes and things are obviously, we all love to resume to normal tomorrow, but given the current environment or in the age of COVID, how would you recommend trying to engage the community? Because if we're not in a place where we can get into the buildings or, take tours of the buildings or really get out there physically with everyone. Has your team thought about how we do that to still have the conversation so we're not further delaying until we can about what that, I know obviously we don't have models of success at this point in time, but do you have feedback on that?
I would think it's the way that you're communicating with your constituency at each school right now. How are you communicating with them? How can we get this information out to them and have those principals maybe quarterback some of this along with me? But that's the distribution point. I think it's got to go local, at each school level, which is how breaking it down into smaller groups, because we can't have 250 people in the auditorium and give a PowerPoint. That's not gonna work.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Avadia?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Neary. Just a couple things. We're meeting with legislators, right? There's this sense in town, we'll Cherry Hill. There's a sense in town that for 30 years we haven't gotten our fair share from state government, and that's had a ripple effect of deferred maintenance. That we just find ourselves in this conundrum. Do you have examples of like people who just like succeeded in like getting someone to give you a building or something like that? Like, is there a way we could direct or as a board we could even support that type of stuff? Question number two. Have you seen like big funding buckets out there that we have not yet considered or that you would recommend that we kind of consider? Number three, COVID has definitely had a lot of effects. I think there's on the board, we're compassionate people, right? We know that there are people who are struggling. Is there a way to look at ability to like withstand taxable rateables? I don't know, whatever the right word is, like what can this community bear? And I guess my last question is, within level one, let's say we determined, just arbitrarily, that 200 million was what we could possibly do. Is there a way to sift it further in priority within level one, or is that 250 sort of like at the same level? Those are just a lot of questions. Take your time.
Okay, we'll go with the easy one. Gifts of facilities and whatnot. The only place I ever really ran into that was in a closed parochial school situation where they wanted to gift or to sell an asset to a public school district. The issue with that is largely over the years, they've been underfunded too with regard to their physical plant. So the gift wasn't a gift. The gift was a building that had an old boiler, heat-only unit ventilators, had no ADA compliance, issues, et cetera. So that gift really wasn't what it was cracked up to be. The other gift that was given was in Edison Township when I was working there many years ago. There was a local developer that had flex space, warehouse space. They had a severe overcrowding issue, and they were able to carve out an early childhood development center out of that space. But those are the really only examples about, a gift. Fundraising, right? So fundraising. The Washington Township Performing Arts Auditorium, which opened in the late 90s that we designed, was sponsored by Commerce back in the day. And they paid whatever it was, $150,000 for sponsorship. There's Gennardi's. Gennardi's bought a gymnasium over in Brooklawn, right, for naming rights and whatever. So naming rights, sports facilities. There's a district that I still represent that went out for an RFP for a naming right in a sports complex, which caused all kinds of problems. And I think that they rescinded it or whatever. So naming rights. Then there's the Education Foundation. Educational Foundation is a steady stream of revenue for instructional enhancements, maybe computers, laptops, Chromebooks, or whatever. And some of the districts do that to the tune of maybe $50,000 to $100,000 through fundraising. I wish there was a golden answer on that, but those are the the different, big fundraising things that I've seen over time. As far as the district taking advantage of state government programs, you've done that. In 2010, you went and got a local government energy audit. In 2020, you got an audit, and your district is poised to go in and get the rebate money. Your district is poised to go get the debt service aid money with the amended long-range facility plan. Your district is poised to get a large share of the American stimulus funds, right? So you're doing what you need to do to get. Now, the debt service aid, of course, comes with a successful vote, right? So that's the largest source, but you are doing whatever you can do as far as I've seen it with my experience. And then what is the taxpayer load that would be acceptable? Well, that comes after we figure out what's a priority, because a lot of times, what's important to the community? At an elementary school, is it important that the all-purpose rooms are equalized in district? I'm just picking one example, because that's a big price tag. Is that important? That's something as an outsider that I saw. Why do these schools have all-purpose rooms and these schools don't? That's a decision that needs to be made, right? You're not gonna have that debate with whether the bathroom needs to be renovation or the HVAC. That's a pretty much constant. But there are some variables that will then gauge the appetite of the big program. So when those variables are defined, then you can put tax impact on that, then you can make choices, and then you can finalize the program. Because if you don't throw mud against the wall, it doesn't stick, and then you can never get where you're gonna be. So you've got to have that test, foot in the water, see where you are, put tax numbers to it, and then see what the digestion is in the community. I always say, my magic number, somebody asked me you did 37 bond referendums that were successful. I always stayed under $200, tried to stay under $200. I don't know, that's just a number that I've had over those number of years. That doesn't mean I haven't passed some at 250, 225, or whatever. But I think that the most I ever launched or had a district launch was in the upper twos. I never launched anything at $300 for the average assessed value over 20 years. Always try to be in that 200 plus. And that's not scientific. That's just doing this over a number of years.
There's also things that can be done. You go out for bond referendum, that doesn't mean that you sell the bond all at the same time. So there's a phasing as you design the projects and you prioritize the projects. The bonds can be sold over a time frame to kind of soften some of that tax impact as well.
What's great about doing a referendum now? Money's cheap. My districts, so Deptford did $36 million. They borrowed the money at 2%. 2%. I mean, it's just unheard of. Now, they're going to pay for it on the construction side because all this money comes into influx into the community, and all this money, and then the prices are going to start going up. But still, that's balanced. The money was cheap and it was opportunistic. So,
Okay, Mrs. Schultz?
There's been some conversation about public-private partnerships. I know there hasn't really been any school districts that have done that, but I was just curious your perspective on that, and if you see that as a viable source of funding for school districts.
yeah, so the public-private, and I had this discussion with Parker McKay, Rick Hunt in particular. His thought on it was that the public-private partnership, almost like we see with the Renaissance schools in Camden City, where the charter schools weren't coming fast online and Mastery came in and started building some schools. He sees that application in new construction, that if you're going to do a new construction, because the private entity has to get a return on the investment. If we're doing HVAC and boilers in a school, what's the return on investment for the private entity? So he thought it was more appropriate for new buildings. And yes, you're right, nobody's put their toe in the water, nobody's done it. And I think that's because we have a declining enrollment, in the state and in this county. Enrollments are declining because the birth rate's down. So that's why maybe nobody's tried it and it's so new. But the Renaissance School in Camden are an example of what private developers in, and, they expedited, I think they did 3 or 4 schools.
Thank you.
But I think it's new construction.
From a funding standpoint, with new construction, there isn't as much state funding, but from a renovation standpoint, you walk away from the 40% funding from the state. And then the payments that you would make back to the, whoever the entity is, are gonna come out of your operating budget. And so you're gonna have to fit those payments under your 2% budget cap and all the other things you're trying to fit into your budget each year. So with debt service aid, that's in a separate fund and that doesn't affect your annual budget. So from a financial standpoint, annual budgeting standpoint, that could be difficult to incorporate into your annual budget.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Were there any other questions or comments from Mr. Garrison? Ms. Stern?
Just 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Oh, lots of. One of the concerns comes to mind is in, again, a school that I have more familiarity with, so forgive me, but just also from a board perspective, one of our high schools, East High School, we've, I think, replaced about 40% of the walls there, and I'm just wondering, like, in terms of, kind of the putting money into a building where we're gonna have to continue to replace walls, I'm guessing you've assessed that building.
Right.
So what do you kind of project with that? That's the first question. And then the other question is just any of these items, and I'm thinking simple things, not simple things, because they're not simple and they're not small in a district this size, but something like painting and even perhaps LED lights, I don't know, I'm throwing out something. What maybe have we not taken advantage of to come out of operations budget versus capital reserves, versus bond? So thank you.
Easy for the last question. As I mentioned, you're already doing LED lighting retrofit. You're already doing ceiling replacement. There was a couple of models done for elementary schools and whatnot. And I know that facilities has that on an annual basis. So you're chipping away at that. So you are doing that work. I said to him, it's great. You guys are getting these ceilings all ready to go. We come through with that HVAC project, boom, that's my raceway. There's a ceiling, but they're doing what they can in the budgeting. At East, you bring up a great point, right? You had that whole courtyard, all those 4 classrooms, very, very expensive, the breezeways, whatnot, the auditorium issue. What I see is the wing over by the dance studio. In my proposal, that's coming down.
Yeah.
I'm demolishing that whole backside, blank piece of paper, going in for specialized spaces, robotics, advanced manufacturing, STEM, STEAM, whatever. Not even dealing with that. So to answer you, I'm demolishing a lot of the remaining pieces that are problematic and rebuilding them and trying to incorporate that into new technology. That's why the new construction number is so good.
So it doesn't fit into the current footprint. It is completely new construction from the ground up.
You've got a lot of movement there.
It doesn't get debt servicing, correct, if we do that?
The new construction will, but at a lesser amount. So let me explain that. When I say renovation costs $1, labor, material, soft costs, the district gets 40 cents on the dollar. Whatever I say, no limit. When we build new, you get 40% of $143 a square foot. So nothing costs $143 a square foot. We're building things for $350, 3 times that. So you end up getting your $143 a square foot at 40%, get your $70 for something that costs $350. And that's where the funding disparity is. A lot of people say, well, why didn't the Department of Education raise that number from $2,000? Because that's how long it's been at $143. Don't they understand market conditions? And the answer is, yes, they fully understand market conditions. They don't want to give you money for new construction because it comes out of the state coffers. They got to raise more money. If they increase that to $350 and the match at 40%, they'd be funding these projects. They want you as a board and a philosophy to work with what you have, which is the capacity issue, right? We take a box, we have functional capacity, and you gotta fit everybody in there. I don't care that you have 2 gyms and 3 locker rooms and whatever, that's your problem. Make them science labs. That's the department's mentality. Live within your means, live within the buildings. That's why they discourage new construction. So when we say we're gonna replace the school, we have to be careful. Because the minute we knock something down, no more is it 40% on fixing it up. It's $70 to rebuild it at $350. Huge disparity. We did that quick exercise at Carusi, and it was mega difference.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Tom?
Thank you, Ms. Laurie. Thank you, Mr. Garrison, for giving us comprehensive overlook today. I do have, I guess not a question, maybe a question, but what Mary mentioned about the wellness with the nursing station. And you have mentioned that the state is also looking into it. Do you think
Yes.
there's a possibility they might be funding these units, the nursing stations in the future that you may know of?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, but again, the state's great for making a regulation, a requirement, and then not funding it. So I have limited hope in that regard. I do know that the space will get a lot bigger and it's be more expensive. If that's the case, and we go in for debt service aid, that reconfigure renovation is 40% of whatever it costs. So you would get that funding if you went to a bond referendum and did debt service aid. But as far as a special program to go fix all the nursing suites in the state, and here's the money, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Thank you for answering that.
Great, thank you. Were there
all
any
for
other
me.
questions? Okay, if no other questions, I thank you, Mr. Garrison, for the presentation. And I will turn it over to you, Dr. Malash, for administrative reports.
Thank you, Mrs. Neer. Bob, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening.
It's always a pleasure.
We will get this, the presentation we posted on the website tomorrow. We've got it electronically. I've confirmed with Mrs. Sugars and make sure with our tech folks and Mrs. Wilson. It'll be on the website tomorrow. We'll put out information so you know where to find it. The first of many, many discussions that'll be ongoing. So thank you, board members, for all of their questions. Bob, thank you for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
It's good to see everybody. Be well, okay? Stay healthy.
Thank you.
And now, Mrs. Neary, Dr. Mahan is
Okay, great.
with us. And we're going to do a brief update on We Return to Learn. So let me just find the right spot here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Malash, for pulling that up. Good evening, members of the board. Just want to, again, as Dr. Malash said, give a brief update on the Return to Learn committees. So today, if you go to the first slide, Dr. Malash, I just want to remind everyone why, again, we are here. We always start our presentation with the district mission statement and thinking about that highlighted part in an ever-changing world and how we are continuing to adapt to all of the challenges that the pandemic has thrown our way. And as you are thinking about the district mission statement, I do remind everyone about the Board of Education strategic goals and how we are thinking about student wellness, purpose and passion, and connecting beyond our classrooms, and how important that is as we are trying to reach our district mission statement. So we continue to be on the road. So students began in-person instruction on March 9th. And for those return to learn preparations, we had several classrooms relocated, others that were redesigned, dividers, desk dividers, partitions have been sent to schools that were in need. We've had multiple letters going out to families regarding 6 feet of spacing and social distancing within the class, and then numerous amounts of communication to parents, teachers, administrators, community members. Today, we had an opportunity for all of the Return to Learn committees to meet. That typically does not happen. We normally meet throughout the week. This morning, high school kicked us off at 7:30. Elementary school then had a meeting quickly after at 8:15, and then middle school met this afternoon at 2:30. Each of our committees, just as a reminder, does include 2 parents on the committee. We also have a board member who sits on each of the committees. At this particular meeting, we did invite all of the members of the Elementary Return to Learn Committee. Typically, the correspondence has been from the co-chairs of the committee, but there are numerous additional voices that have had an impact on the Return to Learn plan, and all of those members participated today. The 2 main topics covered today during the Return to Learn meetings were, how is 4 days of in-person instruction going? And then 5 days a week of in-person instruction, thoughts, just thoughts on that comment, that statement, what resonates with you when you hear that? And then just as a follow-up, our Pupil Services Office has continued to consult with teachers, child study team members, and related services providers to get their input onto or into all of the committees. There is a member of the Pupil Services Office on each of the level committees. So today, themes that came across at all of the levels. So 4 days of in-person has been very positive. The entire school community seems happy and again, positive. All of the groups talked about the enthusiasm that is in the building now that students have returned. So that was refreshing to hear. Some of the things that we talked about in regards to 5 days of instruction included the need to consider the impact on child study team and 504 meetings and related service offerings if Mondays become in person. There was a significant amount of conversation around equity and how the Monday really allows for 1 day of consistency and stability for all of our students. The conversation then shifted to, is a shift worth it at this point? So if we did shift to 5 days of instruction, there are 10 Mondays left before the end of the academic year. And realistically, when would we actually be able to make the shift where Mondays became a part of the 5-day rotation? So is it worth it? And then lastly, are we including remote parent voice or being responsive to the vocal voices? So all of the committees reminded us that there are 40% of our students are still remote. With that, planning for the future, we are continuing to explore all of the options for September of 2021. Our meetings today really concentrated or focused on the remainder of the 2021 academic year. For future planning, we will be looking at the 2021-2022 school year with 5 days of instruction, full day and in person. We also will be discussing, as mentioned at the last meeting, a remote option for September of 2021 and for how long. I just remind everyone that that remote option is available because of the governor's executive order. And if that is not in place, we may not be able to offer that remote option. And then lastly, just in terms of future planning, if we do have to move in that direction, elementary students will be grouped by the grade in which they are enrolled. Middle school students will be grouped by grade and subject, and high school students will be grouped by course. I do want to say that all of the meetings, as always, were very productive today. And, you know, sometimes you enter into these meetings and I feel like people think we always just agree. And there was a lot of dialogue, candid dialogue, critical dialogue today in all 3 of the meetings. There was not consensus. So that healthy dialogue allows us to make decisions that will ultimately be in the best interest of students of Cherry Hill Public Schools. So with that, I end. As always, I end with this slide, questions, because they help us to reflect. Feedback, or questions help us for clarity, excuse me. Feedback helps us to reflect, and reflection and discussion allows us to have greater clarity. So with that, any questions?
Looks like Mrs. Stratton has her hand.
Sure. Dr. Mahan hit right on it I had just a clarity question. For September, we can only offer the remote if it is an executive order by the governor at that time. Is that what you were saying? It's a little unclear for that.
That is correct. So right now, remote learning is allowed as an option because it is connected to the executive order.
Okay.
And the example that I will give to you is that you may have remembered some of the controversy around if there was a snow day, a few years back, if students learned in a remote fashion, that did not count as an academic day. So that's like a comparison for you to be able to use. But right now it is not, it is connected to the executive order.
Okay.
Okay, great. Ms. Sororio? Oh, you're still on mute.
Sorry, all day. I'm excited to see the shift in the conversation, focusing on what the fall looks like. And I like that there was conversation regarding how everything's going and what it would look like to shift to a 5-day in person. And I just would like if we can continue, just get some, additional updates on everything on how it's going, because I like that the conversation has kind of geared towards real possibilities of what it's going to look like moving forward. So if you do attempt to do a 5-day, what does that look like? Are we prepping them for the fall? But then I understand what the concerns around that would be, like trying to shift again in the middle of a school year. So, and I'm really grateful for all the teachers and all the people at the table having these discussions, because I know it's not easy trying to get everybody's input and information on how this can all work for us. So I'm just grateful that everybody's there having a conversation.
Thank you.
Ms. Stratton?
All right, just have one more question. I like Mrs. Arroyo, like that we're thinking about September, because I think, it's gonna sneak up on us really fast. But for the high school students that are they still open to that option in September of doing the additional year? Is that still something that's happening? And please feel free to clarify exactly what that is for some of the parents that are on for our 12th graders for this year.
So I'm going to defer to Dr. Malash and or to Mrs. Weddington.
Dr. Malash can take it.
Thank you, Mrs. Weddington. So the bridge year exists for the graduating class of 2021 and 2022. I need to get confirmation from Mr. Burrell and the high school principals to see if we have any students that are participating. And it was put into place purely for students to have an opportunity to gain back athletic competition. Students would have to be enrolled in dual credit classes in the fall, and then in a collegiate program in the spring in order to be continuing to earn credits prior to receiving an appointment from the school district in June. I can certainly get that information from Mr. Brow and update the board, but it was purely in place for the class of 2021 and the class of 2022. We expect that the Department of Ed will release statewide data about what it looks like, where kids are participating and where they go, or how many are participating and what they're doing. And Mr. Green, I don't know if you have any other about Bridge?
No, that's all the information we have right now, Dr. Malash. We've not heard anything further as of yet.
Okay.
Thank you. I only ask because I feel like Dr. Mahan's committee might want to know if those numbers, what those numbers are, if there's any, just as they're planning and whatnot in terms of spacing and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, good question, Ms. Sommerstein. At this point, and we'll know before the end of the year, the submittal date was mid-February. I'm not aware off the top of my head of anybody that's submitted, but that's what I need to confirm with Mr. Burrell. If there are, it's a very, very low number of students that would be, it would not be of significance that would impact our classroom staffing.
Okay, great. Ms. Stern?
Just a quick follow-up question. Is it just athletics for the students who are eligible for Bridge, or is it also students who are active in other extracurriculars, theater, music, robotics, that kind of stuff?
It could be other extracurricular activities.
And so has that information been widely disseminated
Yes,
to the parents?
it went out to all the parents of juniors and seniors through the high schools back late in January, early in February. And consistent message, I believe, came out through Camden County. Well, what it looked like there was a meeting that the executive county superintendent held with athletic directors and other administrators. And it came out directly from the high school folks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Were there any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Mayhem, for that report.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that brings us now to correspondence. Were there any board members with correspondence? Ms. Matlack.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my notes here. Just very briefly, I attended the Cultural Proficiency meeting on Thursday, March 11th. Subcommittee goal work is happening, and those subcommittees meet separately from the large group monthly meetings. And every month there's a learning piece for the large group by Dr. Moore Williams. And this month there were 3 pieces to it. One was talking about race. The second was the PBS series, Reconstruction, America After the Civil War. And the third piece was the book, Becoming an Anti-Racist. So I will send the links for those first 2 learning pieces that Dr. Moore Williams presented to us to Dr. Malash to include in our Friday memo. I think it'd be very worthwhile for the board members to take a look at those. They fascinating. And we really did learn a lot. It's incredible the amount that we don't know. So those would be very good. And the committee will be presenting to us tentatively, I believe, in April. So we will be hearing from them as a group soon. And then on Monday, March 22nd, I attended the DEAC meeting, and much of the meeting was discussing the APR, Annual Performance Review process that is happening for the teachers right now. And that's it. That's all I attended this month. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Matlack. Mr. Ovadia?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Neary. I just wanted to quickly say that I had the pleasure of attending. I meant the see me button, not the hear me button, for goodness sake. So on March 11th, I had the honor of attending the Beck Virtual Amateur Night at the Apollo. And it was just totally delightful. What a great group. I didn't have a student in the race, so I felt like I could cheer for everyone. But what was most remarkable to me was the level of just positive reinforcement and community that existed on that virtual night at the Apollo. So I gotta say, it was like, I was just grinning. I mean, it was just like all these people jumping in, you did a great job, you're amazing. And they were really excellent, but to see that community come together virtually for the first time in this kind of format for this event was super, super cool. So good job to all involved, and I hope to attend more things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Was there any other correspondence? Ms. Stern?
So I had a chance to attend 2, I guess, activities or meetings. And I don't want to steal Mrs. Arroyo's thunder. So I just want to mention I got a chance to see Mrs. Arroyo as a panelist on Sunday, it's the 21st, at the YMCA New Jersey Youth and Government Civic Engagement Forum, which was really great. And Dr. Malash was in attendance. I got to see your name up there. So I don't want to say anymore because it was Mrs. Arroyo's event, but it was really enjoyable and great activity. And then I got the opportunity to attend the New Jersey School Board Association, had a really interesting webinar or meeting, and just want to get the name right, called Disrupting the Norm, Reimagining Best Practices in iSTEAM and Design Theory. And it was just kind of interesting in light of all the discussion we just even had tonight about different use of kind of space in our buildings and focus on STEM and STEAM. There was a really, there's a big emphasis from the New Jersey School Board Association to really kind of relook at kind of giving our students career-ready opportunities and practices through science. And I know I'm excited because we are going to be offering engineering class next year at the high school level. And actually that's definitely considered a core principle in the next gen science standards. I hope I got that right. That's the kind of governing body on the national level for science education. There's a lot of discussion about the use of like what they call the notebook, and that's kind of a from start to finish students documenting their work and experiences and learning in whether it's engineering, robotics, apparently in biomedical sciences, pharmaceutical industries, for patents. There's kind of a broad opportunity to apply that and the learning. What seems pretty interesting is the focus is getting away from traditional standardized testing type learning models and really having engaged learning for students. So much interesting stuff. And I thought, and the New Jersey School Board Association's offers to bring that information to meet with the board and explain more about that. And I thought, as we're really looking at our goals and, every year we're examining our goals and our strategic plan and our buildings, I just think maybe it's a good time to think about bringing them in and having them talk to the full board, not just, need to be able to attend it. So really fascinating, very problem solving focus for students, and looking at, how do we bring even other curricular learning as part of this model. So it's really pretty interesting. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Stern. Mr. Wario, did you have any correspondence for us?
Well, I wasn't really going to, but since you kind of put it out there, not like people didn't know. No, I had the opportunity to speak on a panel discussion regarding my experience as a board member, but not as representing the board, just putting that out there. But some of the questions and some of the things that were outlined were the great things that Cherry Hill School District has implemented. And I, obviously was really excited that I was on the discussion with Congressman Andy Kim, and some of the experiences we both shared were really intense and important to what the conversations are happening out in the community right now. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity. And I was really happy about Cherry Hill being a standout in terms of the work that's happening here.
Great, thank you, Ms. Wario. Was there any other correspondence? Okay, if not, we will then move to our student representatives for their board reports. And I see Aubrey Demerjian on, so I will let Aubrey go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So I'll be reporting on behalf of East. So beginning with extracurriculars, PTA, and sports updates, there have been many successful events that occurred in the past month. Cherry Hill East held a blood drive on March 17th, and people who donated were also able to get their blood tested for COVID antibodies, which is helping keep the community even more safe. Cherry Hill East DECA also had a successful state competition, sending 42 people to the international competition, including 8 first place winners, 4 second place winners, and 6 third place winners. The theater department has also just finished filming A Little Shop of Horrors, which will premiere the last week of May. It will premiere through Showtix for you, as well as on the East football field to go see it there. There's going to be a drive-in showing with food and trucks on the football field for that. In other news, PTA has also had a successful senior event this past weekend with gifts as a trick-or-treat style thing for the seniors to walk around the school and get candy outside and meet with like friends. Furthermore, many sports have had a successfully proceeding with their competitive seasons, such as wrestling, swimming, basketball, volleyball, and more, which have had their final meets recently, finishing up their seasons. And spring sports have also begun to prepare for their seasons, which many officially begin in April. Concerns with the schedule. So many students and parents have expressed a concern with the new schedule. So although the increased time in between classes is an improvement over the previous circumstances, the lack of an actual lunch period makes it difficult to have time to eat throughout the day. The breaks are not long enough, and many students would prefer just combining the breaks into a longer lunch period in between the day. It's obviously difficult to have a full lunch period with COVID and being safe. So one solution that we've been hearing a lot is setting up a lunch outside as it gets warmer into the spring season. This can help split up the people inside and out while also providing ample time to eat. This particularly is important for athletes who are hesitant to come in person because they want to be well nourished and extended for after school practices and competition, because little snacks in between like protein bars and things like that just won't be sufficient for them. And then considering the fact with the outdoor lunch thing, as it gets warmer, East does have 3 different courtyards and places that they can all be separated to provide more social distance for that. SGA updates. The student government is preparing for Spirit Week and is working with the class officers to create a promotional video. They view this as a great way to get the student body outside and active for Spirit Week, while also maintaining social distancing guidelines, which typically Spirit Week is in the fall before Thanksgiving, but has been delayed until the spring. Furthermore, the sophomore class had their own town hall meeting on March 1st, and we'd like to share some feedback that they received. So 60% of their students believe that we need to change our break schedule, and this schedule has changed since conducting the poll. So we look forward to sharing how the results shift in the next meeting. 76% of students also voted that there needs to be more communication between guidance counselors and students, while 71% of students voted that there needs to be more communication between teachers and students, and 82% between administration and students. 85% of students believe that the homework-life balance for students is a pressing issue, with 72% of students said the abundance of homework was increasingly pressing for them and intruding on their other activities. So over 150 sophomore students participated in these polls, so it's a lot of people that were surveyed for this to give feedback to the board to take into consideration. And that's all for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey. And we have our readout from Wes. I believe this evening.
Hello. Good evening to Dr. Malash, the Board of Education, and everyone in attendance. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you tonight. In the Cherry Hill West Community Report, we would like to speak about our 4-day hybrid opening. The energy within the walls at Cherry Hill West is returning alongside the students that are coming in regularly. Starting on the week of March 9th, the 4-day option for hybrid students was opened up. And after the implementation of the option, in-person numbers grew from an average of 1 to 3 students in each class to 6 to 10 students in person for each class. The rise in student presence has made a change for the better on our community in the energy and the environment within High School West. Teachers have enjoyed the long-awaited connection with their students, and students are feeling a sense of normalcy again and seeing their peers and learning inside a school building once again. We're glad to see our peers enjoying the new in-person option. This new in-person option certainly has its faults, as Board Representative Aubrey Demerjian echoed earlier with our extended break periods. While I understand that pandemic response committees at each school have spoken and corresponded to figure out the optimal decision for implementing these break periods and allowing students to eat in between periods, there's certainly some work to do, and I look forward to seeing that happen. In current events on the local level, sadly, on Tuesday, March 9th, a Cherry Hill West alumni and member of the graduating class of 2019, at the age of 19, Matthew Stankus has passed away after a long-fought battle with a rare form of cancer, rhabdomyosarcoma. Matt was an incredibly involved student at Cherry Hill West, being a 4-year varsity swimmer and member of the marching band. His attitude consistently won him the Unsung Hero Award 4 years in a row at the swim banquet. In honor of his dedication, positivity, and perseverance, the Cherry Hill West swim team is to rename the Unsung Hero Award to the Matthew Stankus Unsung Hero Award. Our condolences are with the Stankus family during this difficult time. Rest in peace, Matthew. In current events, in national news, riveting news has broken around the nation last week. On Tuesday, March 16th, 2021, in an act of violence and hatred, an armed assailant murdered 8 people at an Atlanta spa complex. 6 of those who lost their lives were Asian women. May we have a moment of silence, please, for the victims. Hyun Jung Grant, Xiaoji Tian, Delana Ashley Yuan, Paul Andre Mitchells, Yong Ai Yue, Sun Cha Kim, Sun Chung Park, and Dao Yo Feng. Thank you. Asian and non-Asian students and their families alike commend this letter of address from the district regarding the tragedy that was sent out. The district has done an excellent job in the past addressing tragic events in the news that may affect the morale of certain student groups. And nonetheless, the district has carried on and provided services usually provided to students in times of need through counselors and student advocates. We all thank you. In athletic news, on a brighter page, this week, the West boys and girls swim team had ended their season. Both teams went on undefeated in their division. Earning the title of Baltic Division champions, we congratulate Coach Begley and Coach Robertson for the fantastic season. Spring sports are ramping up back at Cherry Hill West. Baseball, softball, lacrosse, volleyball, and track are all beginning their seasons, with all sports but volleyball taking place outdoors, enjoying the new milder weather. West is hopeful to allow parents and peers to spectate these games, given that these venues have ample space and all attendees are masked and socially distanced. In our performing arts news, referring to choral music, as new guidelines and approvals have been made, the co-curricular and extracurricular choral groups have made the opportunity to rehearse and sing together indoors for the first time in over a year. Granted, there is ample space and ample masks worn, and students are only restricted to singing for 30 minutes indoors with a 30-minute break afterwards, or 30 minutes outdoors with a 5-minute break afterwards. The singers have certainly missed having this experience of singing with their peers for the past year and have been enjoying every 30-minute interval fully. The singers cannot wait for what is to come. And coming up in this month, we will be releasing virtual choirs for all 3 of our student a cappella groups, our co-ed group, chamber singers, our all men's group, Men of Note, and our all females group, Fermata. In theater news, in the past month, High School West Theater Department has been busy and fulfilling for all students and production members involved. We Will Rock You went off without a hitch, without any technical issues, and the turnout from the audience was wonderful to see. From behalf of the West Theater Department, we would like to thank everyone from the audience and members of the board who attended and supported us. Stage crew has been meeting weekly and have been resuming their usual duties under the supervision of Mr. Cooper Gorlick. Coming up, we anticipate a virtual play, Powerline, a one-act romantic comedy by Don Zalitis that tells the story of a video game hotline worker in 1989. More details are to come later. We expect to film just as East did for Little Shop of Horrors, and we will be premiering on Showtix. In miscellaneous news, formal fun for students. Just recently, our sophomore class has confirmed that there will be a sophomore cotillion come May 1st at 7 p.m. We're excited for our sophomore class to be able to have a fun formal event this year. Plans are still underway for the senior prom. Class advisors and students have marked June 3rd as the best date so that students can still attend without having concerns about attending graduation in person. Events for the senior class. As we know, the senior trip to Disney World has been canceled for Cherry Hill High School West, but that did not deter us from putting on great fun for our seniors. Currently, we have planned with many committees and our student activities coordinator, Carol Roscoff, to put on many senior events, such as possibly a trip to Wildwood, a trip to Six Flags Great Adventure, I'm sorry, and a possible community night at our very own big event center. Possibly we'll be having 2 of those big event nights where there will be catered food and great fun in bowling and billiards. We also plan on having a virtual game night with our senior class. The Something Fun calendar. In an effort to boost student morale and community engagement, Administrator and Ms. Staffen has worked with staff to offer events for the student body. Staff members are holding after-school events pertaining to a special interest. Students are encouraged to attend and make a connection with their peers and teachers alike as in normal years. Fun things are to be offered, such as a cooking class with Mr. Chivarella, yoga and gardening with Mrs. Castellani, and current events with Mr. Bova, and a media binge with Mr. Stephen Answer. These are just a few of the many offerings that we have. We are glad to see our teachers reaching out and connecting with our students. Just recently, this Saturday, we hosted a senior event in the Jones Gym parking lot where seniors came around to pick up a goodie bag with candy, beverages, and such. They were able to have a socially distanced gathering with seniors alike and connect with faces that they likely haven't seen in over a year. Closing up, let's speak about the New Jersey Youth and Government Program, the regional panel discussion. A quick thank you to our very own board member, Ms. Arroyo, for her participation as a panelist for the New Jersey Youth and Government Program. The regional panel discussion happened on March 21st, and high school students from all over New Jersey were invited to the discussion. I was in the attendance for a brief moment, and many of my peers were too. We thank Ms. Arroyo for speaking. And that will be it. I yield my time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay. That now brings us to our first public comment. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for agenda items only. There will be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting. And when speaking, please give your full name and address along with the agenda item you'll be speaking to. And as usual, I will start with the attendees on the line. And once we complete everyone on the line, we will move to the written submissions. Okay, and the first is Rick Short.
Can you hear me, Ms. Neary?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak, my name is Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. I'm going to speak about the 2 items of return to learn and about the bond. First off, with the return to learn, thank again the district for 4 days a week, but I see no reason why we can't push the 5th day. Everyone's asking for it. Even though if there's 5 or 10 weeks left in the school year, we should push to get everyone back 5 days a week. I want to thank the speaker from East who just talked about extending the time for lunch. It's very important that the students are outside for lunch, because if you reviewed the Georgia and Wisconsin CDC reports on the school studies, both of them mentioned transmission caused indoors from lunch. Now, I'd also like to speak about the bond. First off, I was pretty impressed by Mr. Garrison's presentation. I hope he's still on the line. His mention about the the way the buses come in. I'm glad they are looking at that. And if Mr. Garrison's listening, I hope they take special note to, I believe, Barkley and definitely Kingston, where you have children crossing in front of vehicles. It's just poor design, and we need better stuff. But the district has failed again with the bond to start. Why didn't the district review this with the volunteer ad hoc committee for the bond? There were over 25 volunteers that spent time. We all asked to review before it went public. So that's your first mistake. Your second mistake, and this happened before, was there's no long-term vision. That's what everybody was saying. Just because we have one bond, what's the next projected thing 10 years ahead? If you don't have these things coming in the next bond, it will fail again. And I'm tossed up between I'm in a Bill Murray Groundhog Day or can't teach old dogs new tricks. Why are we spending $1.1 million on a vestibule for Beck? Why are we spending $389,000 for a staff bathroom at Beck because you didn't get it done the first time? This is idiotic that we're spending millions of dollars on vestibules. The district doesn't listen. I hope the board speaks up. There's different ways. You've ignored Mrs. Friedel's comments 4 months ago about why can't they build outward at these certain schools. You continue to come up with bad plans. This should have all been done before. I wish you the best. I hope to work with the district to make a good bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Okay, next we have Kim Gallagher. And please state your full name, address, and agenda item.
Kimberly Gallagher, 1537 Hillside Drive. Same with Mr. Short. I want to talk about return to learn and the bond. So similarly, you're right. Maybe we have 10 Mondays left or 10 weeks left of school. Excuse me, my child's yelling in the background. But it's worth it to our kids and to the families within this community. In addition, if the district really wants to plan on a full 5-day return come the fall, this would be the best time to provide the district the opportunity to see what works and what doesn't. And then what doesn't work, it gives them 3 months over the summer to figure it out. Like, is it finding more staff? Is it rearranging rooms? Is it, whatever those issues that arise, this is like the best time to figure it out. And I think it's time for our kids to be back in school, find some normalcy, and, get a full day in of education. So with the bond, I obviously see the benefits, and I see that the district needs these building improvements. However, I think the biggest hurdle that the district is going to see is the community doesn't necessarily understand what their money is being used for. Many people spend $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 each year on taxes. And many are going to say, well, I already pay this much money in taxes. Why do I have to give you another $200 a year? You're right. Maybe it doesn't sound like much, but if every year our taxes are going up every 3%, at some point you're going to price people out of the market, right? People aren't going to be able to move to Cherry Hill because they can't afford to live here. In addition, it just feels like there's been financial mismanagement. Besides the fact that, our community hasn't received the funding that we deserve. And I don't really know what the district has done to get the money that is rightfully ours. Had we received the $10 million for 10 years, we'd have $100 million that we could have allocated towards necessary updates within our buildings. And then you wouldn't be needing to ask the community for more money. It just feels like you're asking for so much from us and yet providing so little in return. It's very much a quid pro quo at some point. I feel like I had another point now, I don't remember. Finally, oh, that's what it was. Mr. Garrison seems very informed. However, he talks about money is cheap, debt services through the state, but that's our money that we're paying already in taxes. So you're double dipping. And I think you need to be careful about thinking of us as an open wallet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallagher. Next is Carolina Bevitt.
Hi, Carolina Bevid, 1213 Cropwell Road. I'll be commenting on the We Return to Learn portion of the agenda. As the pandemic has unfolded, one thing has remained constant. Kids are not at risk. Additionally, as more data emerges and more people are vaccinated, although many have been touched by loss, worst case scenarios have been averted. Yet guidance continues to lag behind science on best practices for opening schools. The time has come for school to resume on a normal schedule. There are no more excuses. The safety protocols work and in-person learning is a success. Maintaining the status quo cannot be the goal. We need to get kids back in school as much as possible, as soon as possible, and in-person learning should be endorsed. There is no substitute. And to answer the question in Dr. Mahan's presentation, yes, every student who needs in-person instruction is worth it. Also, if virtual Mondays are preserved in the name of pandemic-centric social emotional learning, then schools need to align on that goal. First of all, learning social skills virtually is an oxymoron. But besides that, at my kids' school, social emotional learning has been focused on Women's History Month for the past 3 weeks. An important topic, no doubt, but certainly not evidence that Mondays are time well spent. Throughout the year at my kids' school, no pandemic-related trauma or feelings have ever been addressed, and the second step curriculum has been generic and poorly implemented. For the remaining 1/3 of the school year, Mondays need to be better utilized. They're not successful as social emotional support, and instructional time continues to be squandered for 1/5 of the week. Something needs to be done. I've contacted district officials about this repeatedly, but have gotten no response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bevitt. Okay, next we have Lauren Greenberg.
Hi, Lauren Greenberg, 508 Bryan Drive. I want to also, like everybody else, address We Return to Learn as well as the bond. I think the presentation that Mr. Garrison gave was really good, really informative, and obviously this is something that we need. But I believe you spoke a lot about how can we get the community engaged. When you say something like, we only have 10 more Mondays, is it worth it? That makes my head explode. I mean, that is not engaging the community. There are so many kids out there that could use the additional in-person time. To say that our kids are not worth it, you already are trying, you're already going to have to overcome a lack of trust in this community because of the pandemic and the missteps that were taken throughout this school year. I think by not trying to move forward this year with more, there's going to be more trust issues and you're going to have to get past that. As Kim stated, why not try to work out the hurdles this year? What works, what doesn't work? Because if you don't do that, how do we have any trust that 5 full days are really going to happen in September? You guys can state it, you can give all the presentations in the world, but everything's changed last minute this year. So how are we going to believe that it can happen if we don't try it? I think it's really important that you continue to show progress this year. There are still a few months left in school. I think it's important that we use them wisely to increase in-person instruction. These kids deserve it and they need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greenberg. Next, we have Mel B. Please state your full name, address, and agenda item.
Melissa Bush, 420 Lavender Hill Drive, agenda item 8.1. Moving our children to in-person instruction 4 days per week has been one of the bright spots of the 2020-21 school year. Though school isn't exactly how they remembered or had envisioned, it has given them a taste of the new normal. They are happy to head out in the morning, come home excited to talk about their days, and are eager to see those familiar faces as soon as possible again. Most importantly, this was accomplished without our schools experiencing any COVID-19 outbreaks or closures. Indeed, this is a good first step, but more is needed. With cases ticking down, greater vaccine availability, a promise from the president that anyone who wants the vaccine will have it by the spring, as well as updated guidance from the CDC that states 3 feet of distance is as safe as 6 feet, in classrooms. Cherry Hill needs to steadily increase in-person instruction time for this school year. Our kids need more instruction, socialization, and engagement. With approximately 30% of the school year left, now is the time to seize the day. After spring break, the district should begin by making Mondays an in-person instruction day for all students. During that same period, the district should bring back all self-contained students back to school for 5 full days a week. By May 1st, the district should return to a 5 full day per week in-person schedule for all families who want it. These days should include recess and lunch so they can engage with their peers. The district should take advantage of the spring weather and implement some innovative ideas, such as rotating lunch schedules or using outdoor spaces. Increasing in-person instruction will help the district get ahead and address learning loss among existing students and identify those children who have not been evaluated. This will be a win-win for students, families, and teachers. The sooner their needs can be met, the better. Moving ahead in this way will go a long way at providing goodwill to those parents who have lost trust in your leadership, direction, and words. Also, it gives you an opportunity to see what works and what doesn't prior to the 2021-2022 school year. Now is your time to step up to the plate and show us what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bush. Next is Jamie Goodwin.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard South. I wanted to also speak to 8.1, We Return to Learn. I really appreciated that the presentation kind of covered about what was happening still left and not just jumping to the future. And I wanted to speak from the perspective of thinking about high school students, as well as from the perspective of someone from the margins and Black students, disabled students, all from this kind of perspective, because I think something that came up in one of the students' presentations was about the workload. And every time I come on and I share about that, and I think that's really important, because just as, 10 Mondays is really important about for a lot of families of coming back, I think it's a lot of time to still change the way that we're doing school in terms of homework and the kind of pressure on students. I know that many students have jobs. I know that many students are trying to balance this new schedule and also have various learning challenges or differences. I know that it's just weighing with so many different things coming in the news. We have so many violence against particular identity groups, marginalized identity groups, and sort of trying to navigate that, the mental health. And the fact that we went from a really clear way in which students were not giving way too much workload in a new kind of environment like a pandemic, and we got rid of that completely, doesn't seem to make sense. And I think that that has burdened students, and we still have an opportunity to change. So I just wanted to bring that up as we're kind of thinking about what's happening still in this year, that there's still an opportunity to add some guidelines so that students aren't overwhelmed with this workload and can still feel healthy when they leave the end of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Okay, next we have Nick Bevid.
Hi, good evening. Nick Bevid, 1213 Cropwell. I will be quick, as my my sentiment echoes a lot of what's being said today. It relates to commenting on We Return to Learn. I think we need to come together as a community collaboratively to get the kids back in 5 days a week this year, again, to earlier points, so we can work on together feeling out what works best for not just the last third of this year, but for September, what we see works, what we can make better for the students. For a millennia, this norm Monday was, done in school, right? And norm setting Mondays do not need to be virtual. They can be in school. Many of our parents and grandparents did it the same way. So I think that we can do this as a community. Let's get our kids back in 5 days a week. And this way we set ourselves up for success in the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bevid. Okay, I will turn it over to Ms. Sugars for the submitted comments.
I don't have any for the first public comment period, Mrs. Neary, just for the second.
Okay, great, thank you. Then I will turn it over to Dr. Malash for superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I just want to start by thanking Mr. Garrison for being here this evening and delivering this presentation. And just based on some of the comments, I just want to clarify, what Mr. Garrison was delivering was the long-range facilities plan. Mr. Garrison did not deliver a bond presentation tonight. There is not a bond, right? There is no bond that's been constructed. This is the work that our architectural firm that we've contracted with, they were selected brand new through an RFP process last year. The work that they've spent the year going through, this is the new set of eyes coming in from the outside, identifying work that they believe needs to be done for our facilities over the long term. Now, we anticipate, because of the volume of work that needs to be done, and that's why you showed the timeframe towards the end, the decisions will be made during the course of the next 10 to 12 months about including some of these items in a bond referendum. But that's where that'll go. This is not a referendum. This could not be shared with the ad hoc committee prior to it being shared with the board. The way that it works is information has to go to the board first. We can't release this to an outside group before we release it to the Board of Education. After releasing it tonight, because again, our goal consistently is to be as transparent as possible. This, like as we said, confirmed, will be posted on our website tomorrow. But I am grateful for the work that Mr. Garrison and his team have done. I think board members had some great questions tonight. And I know, for one, as a community member and somebody who's here, I'm looking forward to the ongoing discussions about what it is that the districts, the board, the community value about the work that needs to be done within our schools. Because there certainly is a lot that's identified that we know has to be taken care of. And I would thank Dr. Mahan for giving us the update on We Return to Learn. And a special thank you again to all the members of the We Return to Learn committees. Again, just as a way of point of clarification, the discussion that came out today, and Dr. Mahan was reporting out on what that discussion was, the expression about, are the 10 days worth it? Is it worth it to change that schedule? That's not a value judgment that Dr. Mahan was making in her presentation. That literally is a reflection of the conversation that took place among the committee members. She cannot be any more transparent about what occurred in those meetings other than what she reported out in that presentation this evening. It literally is what took place, right? That's what went on around the table. Parents that are involved, staff members that are involved, to take a look at. And there are, one of the things that, and she highlighted, that we always have to remind ourselves, is when we look at the overall numbers, there's about 40% of our students who families have selected that remote instruction option. And that's real. And our responsibility is to make sure that in the work that's being done, that we are providing as high quality, as thorough an education as we can for all of our children. Those who are physically in our classrooms and those who are home or in another location during the course of the day for a host of reasons as to why families have selected that remote option. Our responsibility, again, is to take that balance. What's it look like for everybody, and what's the best we can possibly do? Again, I'm incredibly thankful to the teachers and the administrators who have served in this committee for so long and put so much into it. I have had the opportunity to be in many of our schools over the few weeks that we've been on the 4 days of live instruction. I've spoken to many teachers, I've had the chance to interact with many students. And absolutely, the people that are in the schools are thrilled that there are more people that are in school, right? And we've said from the very beginning, our staff members, our teachers, our administrators, the secretaries, custodians, our Aramark staff, we want everybody to be back in school full time. That's our plan for the fall. That's where we are. If the state provides us that option, we will continue to plan for during the course of the spring and the summer with remote option, again, as Dr. Mahan talked about. But people are excited to have kids back. The setups in the classroom, they've done a great job, again, to maximize that social distancing and what it looks like. And no, we do not have 6 feet of social distancing in all of our spaces. The CDC did change their guidelines in their discussion about having 3 feet and what that looked like at different levels, elementary, middle school, high school. We shared out that information, encouraged people to take a look at it. I do have to caution folks, especially parents, one of the things that did not change is that if somebody is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes cumulative time over 24 hours, that still makes them a close contact, right? The CDC is changing guidance from 6 feet to 3 feet does not change close contact. Close contact still remains at 6 feet. So if we do have positive cases, it will impact those children and or adults who are within or less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes over the course of 24 hours. Yesterday, we had a special program here in the district. We've had staff members involved in for a number of years. We've done a formal program, and that's with Rowan University, where we've welcomed their Project Impact Scholars. And Project Impact stands for Increasing Male Practitioners and Classroom Teachers. This very unique program down at Rowan seeks to help to diversify the teaching staff with underrepresented young men of color to go into education. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. We have yet to have any of our students graduate from Cherry Hill and go into the program. I'm hoping that this year we have our first one. But we have worked through this program. George Guy, who's the principal over at Rosa Middle School, is one of the mentors in the program, as is Dr. Morton, as is Mr. Ramos, Mr. Edwards. A number of our other folks in the district have served as mentors to some of the students at Rowan who are in the program. But Mr. Guy, and then through Dr. Mahan's office, they've put this visit together over the course of the last couple of years. And it brings together the students from Rowan and our students, our young men of color in our high schools who may be interested in going to education as a career. A number of us have the opportunity to speak to them and to welcome them. I was thrilled to have that opportunity yesterday. Ms. Corinne Elmore Stratton, one of our board members, she did a welcome on behalf of the board to all the folks that were involved. Dr. Morton had the opportunity to speak, and Dr. Morton, in his words, referred to the last time we were all together for this program. And just to see the number of folks from across the district, students and staff members involved, was truly a moving experience. Our male staff members of color also participated in the interactive call and meeting with students. We told the kids, again, there's not a better profession they could go into than education. And again, we are encouraging them to continue to be involved. And then you come back here to Cherry Hill to teach after they finish or go through a program. I appreciate Nathan and Aubrey doing their updates about what's been going on in the high schools. Winter sports seasons have come to a close. A little bit of an in-between season with wrestling is going on. Young men and women from our high schools competing in wrestling and in our middle schools doing a phenomenal job, and spring sports will open soon. Thanks to Mr. Doral, who's our director of athletics, all of the coaches and the parents and the students for all that they have done to keep themselves involved and prepared. The theater programs, the musicals, and the shows that have been produced, those that are upcoming, the kids and the adults have done an incredible job, again, to shift with how they are presenting what is done. We're looking forward to the upcoming concerts and additional events that are taking place. And finally, again, just to recognize our staff, our support staff, our instructional staff, our therapists and counselors, and child study team members for their work. We have continued to ask more of them this year than we ever have before. I believe that they, as individuals and as a collective, have worked harder during the 2020-2021 academic year than they ever have before, and it shows. The relationships that exist as I've been in classrooms, and the way that teachers are able to maintain relationships with the students in front of them and the students online on the same time is incredible. Their dedication, their energy, their involvement will continue to pay dividends as we move forward. And thank you for so many people being involved. Mrs. Neary, that's all that I have for this evening.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to our action agenda. And first we will have curriculum and instruction. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Matlack to move that agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2020-21 school year. Number 2, resolution approving a professional services agreement between the Cherry Hill Board of Education and Effective School Solutions to provide mental health services. Number 3, approval of middle school and high school summer reading lists for the 2020-2021 school year. Number 4, approval of summer programs for 2021. Do I have a second? Mrs. Arroyo, are there any questions or comments from the board? I don't see any on my screen. Are there any in the boardroom, Dr. Malash?
There are not, Mrs. Matlack.
Thank you. Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the voting. And Mrs. Arroyo, I'm gonna do yours verbally because I'm having trouble getting you into the roll call there. So Mrs. Arroyo, can I record your vote?
Yes. It's a yes, but it came up too. I don't know
Oh, it
why.
did come up, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it on my side, I'm glad you're seeing it on your side, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Did you have all the votes, Mrs. Sugars?
I do, it's a unanimous vote, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, next is business and facilities, and I will turn that over to Mrs. Schultz to move that agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Perry. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolutions. Number 3, resolution for the award of request for proposal for enterprise detection and response between the Cherry Hill Board of Education and Kroll Associates Incorporated. And number 4, resolution for the award of change orders. Do I have a second? Mr. Abadio, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
I'm gonna open up the online voting for board members. And we have a unanimous yes vote.
Great, thank you. Next is the human resources agenda, and I will also turn that over to Mrs. Schultz.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointments certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 8, other compensation certificated. Number 9, approval of a new job description. And number 10, other motions. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the online voting. Members, you may cast your votes.
Mrs. Sugars,
Yes.
I'd like to abstain on only 16.1, but yes to the rest.
Okay, so duly noted.
Okay, great. And that brings us to the policy.
Ms. Neary, before we move on, can I just make
yes.
some quick comments?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Malash.
That's okay. So first, in the human resources section in 16.2, termination of employment non-certificated. Tonight is the last official board meeting that Mr. Joe DiCarlo will be working with us. So Joe has been with us for a number of years, first as an educational assistant at Beck Middle School, and over the last few years with the technology department, where he served a multitude of roles, one of which is always being on our electronic board meetings with everything that we do and getting stuff on the website, and honestly serving as a jack of all trades. Joe's moving on into the publishing world and working in electronic media, which is what he went to school for and his training. We've been fortunate to have Joe with us. He will absolutely be missed, but I'm sure that we will be able to see his work and his contributions as he moves forward, and we will keep in touch with him. So a special thank you to Mr. Joe DiCarlo. And then second, in 16.10, under other motions, the board voted to appoint Dr. Kwame Morton Sr. As Assistant Superintendent for Pre-K 12 and Curriculum and Instruction. Remember the way the structure works. First, back last month, the board approved sending his contract to the Executive County Superintendent to be reviewed. Once the Executive County Superintendent approved it, then it comes back to the district in order for the district to do the appointment. So Dr. Morton will be our newest Assistant Superintendent, and he will begin in that role on July 1st. Just a little bit of background, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Morton to share a few words. Dr. Morton earned his bachelor's degree from Clarion University of Pennsylvania. He has a master's degree from the College of St. Rose, which, by the way, is a place where he was featured in a recruitment video to get people to come to the College of St. Rose. And then he has his doctorate from North Central University. Dr. Morton is rare in the educational world because he has worked as an administrator with students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade, starting his career in New York City, in Brooklyn, moving down into Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. And he's been here in Cherry Hill since 2008, first serving as the principal of Kilmer Elementary School, and since July 1st of 2013 as the principal of Cherry Hill High School West. So congratulations, Dr. Morton, if you want to say a few words.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful for your support, your mentorship over the years. I recall coming into West and all of the conversations that we would have. It seemed like almost daily. I felt terrible to have to call you every day, but you were always there to support me and to be supportive. I recall being at Johnson Elementary on the day, the initial board meeting where I came in and was appointed as the Kilmer principal. And as I got in the car with my family, you were there as well. And tell me, as the CHASA president, you were there to support as well. So thank you so much for your support, your encouragement, your belief over the years. I'm really, really grateful. My wife is sitting here, she's off to the side, but she's really the reason I applied to Cherry Hill. She envisioned me being able to come into a place like Cherry Hill and make an impact. And, sometimes husbands, we have to just listen to what our wives tell us. And that was one of the situations there. And truthfully, in the 15 years we lived in New Jersey now, we've graduated 6 of our kids from high school, 5 of which are in college, 2 still in high school, 1 in 7th grade and one in 5th grade. We love our kids with everything that we have. They're the best that we have to offer in this world. Our kids are immensely talented. They are intelligent. They have great qualities, but they also have flaws as well. And when we send our kids out into the world, we send them to the schools, we hope that they won't be judged by their flaws, but they'll be embraced and they'll be loved in the same manner that we love them. And that's ultimately my philosophy on how I believe we should be working with kids and how we interact with kids. We give our kids the benefit of the doubt. We serve our kids. We serve the community. We allow our kids room to grow. That's what it's all about. That's what I've always believed in. That's what this district believes in. The administrators and teachers that I've been around, that's exactly what they've demonstrated. And that's what I intend to still support and to be about. So thank you for the opportunity. The opportunity it means so much to me and it means so much to my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morton.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Congratulations. Okay, great. Okay, so now we are at policy and legislation part of the agenda, and in Ms. Friedell's absence, I will go ahead and move that agenda. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: 17.1, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigative decisions. 17.2, waiver of regulation 2340, field trips. 17.3, action to consent and approve policy and legislation items 17.1 and 17.2. Do I have a second? Mrs. Schultz, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, we have opened up the online voting. Board members, you may cast your votes.
Mrs. Sugars, I have to abstain from 17.1.
Okay.
Mrs. Sugar, I have to do the same, abstain from 17.1.
Sally, I'm going to put you as a yes. the other one?
17.1 is the one I'm abstaining. Everything else is a yes.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a unanimous vote other than the 2 items noted.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, that brings us to strategic planning. And I don't believe we have anything additional, Dr. Malash, after Mr. Garrison's presentation earlier.
I don't believe so tonight, Mr. Avadia.
Well, it's sort of tough to say because I don't know if asking questions of Mr. Garrison is doing the board's work when it comes to kind of what he presented. And that's what I really don't. I mean, I think, Dr. Malash did some good clarification earlier, but I think, we can't look to Garrison as the guy who tells us how to do the roadshow or what matters to the community or what transparency and process looks like. That really is the function of the board. Now, we could say to Mr. Garrison, look, we have no earthly idea, what do you think? And adopt that. We could see that power, but, as we saw today, it's a fairly big price tag. So I don't know where that belongs, but I think it's something we do need to think about as a board, right? We can't really do that in committee, and there's a lot of work to be done. So yeah, I don't really know, but I think if there was anything for strategic planning, that would be the discussion. That's really all I can offer.
Okay, were there any other comments from the board on that? Okay. I will move on then to new business. Did anyone have any items for new business? Okay. Was there anything for old business this evening?
Lori, I can't get my hand to raise, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem, Ms. Schultz. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't really know that this is old business. I was just gonna ask or make a suggestion. I know we're putting the presentation from Garrison up on the website. Is it possible to also perhaps link the discussion from tonight's board meeting, the live link underneath the presentation? I think it just might be good for the community to see the presentation, but also maybe make a bullet that if you want to hear the presentation done by Mr. Garrison, click on this link as well, because seeing the presentation and hearing him deliver it might also be good context for somebody going in. I don't know if we can do that. That's
Ms. Schultz, I will tell you, I believe so.
Okay.
And since he's still with us for a couple of days, I'll ask Mr. Carlo. And if we can do it, if it can be done,
yeah.
He'll work it out for us.
Or at a minimum, maybe direct, hey, if you want to hear the
Yep.
discussion, click on the district's link or something. But I think maybe connecting the,
Putting it together.
putting it together, here's the presentation and also the in minutes by through whatever the architect actually discussed in more detail, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, like I said, I believe that it can. I'll talk to Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Carlo. I know we'll get it worked out.
Okay.
So it'll be up there.
Yeah, so
Good
I don't know if
suggestion.
that's old business, but thank you.
Why not?
Well, that's up, what, a couple hours ago.
Right.
No problem. Ms. Stern?
Just a quick question follow-up. I don't know that we've ever resolved what we're doing with town halls. And our last kind of date that was on the calendar came and went because we felt like, we wanted to make them relevant. I'm just kind of wondering from my fellow board members what we want to do going forward regarding them. Anyone has any thoughts or input?
So the committee recommendation based on the thought exchange feedback, it's gonna be hard to do anything except be a return to learn next. It's what the community is demanding. The thought exchange that we presented, I think the last full board was fairly compelling around that issue. I think to do anything but we return to learn in April would be a mistake. Now, at the same time, Mr. Royal last time did mention that we do need to thread in community feedback, perhaps through a town hall about bond. So it's one of those things that I don't know that we could do both. The committee recommendation, at least, that went sort of unopposed last time, is to focus on return to learn for April. In May, my recommendation, but I mean, this is something we would talk about at the committee level, I guess, would be to do some piece of a roadshow, you know, in sort of a larger format. But that needs buy-in from the board. We, you know, I hate to send administration to do it and then say, well, that's really not what we wanted. So I think I think you're right, that the direction has to come from the board. So I don't know, but April, my recommendation and what the committee had kind of agreed on is we got to listen to the community do your because that's 90% of the comments we got.
So that's kind of set. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I'm just wondering what, you know, everyone thinks.
Mr. Rorio?
I like that idea. I like going, you know, continuing to talk about we return to learn, but finding a way to weave in the conversation. Today's presentation was super helpful, and I really liked how Garrison laid everything out. And I think just kind of letting people flesh that out a little bit, but also giving them some time to get through the presentation themselves on their own time. And then that way they can better maybe have some more time to reflect on some suggestions that they may have. And then Garrison to be able to kind of weave that into the discussion overall. But it's a good place to start, and I wouldn't wait too long to have that conversation. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Rorio. Was there anyone else? Okay. Well, if there's no one else, we'll move on to the second public comment. Okay. And the second public comment is for any topic, 3 minutes, and please ensure to state your full name and address. And we'll start with Rick Short.
Good evening again. Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. Tonight I'd like to speak about the addition of acrylic shields or plexiglass shields to some of the classrooms. First off, there was never any formal discussion in a board meeting about these. There's never been any questions asked by the board members. I've been sending you for over 2 weeks now emails about my concerns, but now I get to go on the record on a video record. First off, the CDC has never tested this product to see if it even works. The University of Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Miller is advising not to use them. There's a new report coming out from the Clinic Mayo that these are not effective. We know from statistics that towns like Hazlitt, Freehold, Tenafly, all have 2 to 3 times more cases that use these shields. Last week, Hazlitt had an additional 15 cases. Freehold added them on February 22nd, and by March 5th, already had to close down an entire middle school. Teen Leaf, again, up to. The future adds is this: Newark is invested over 25 in 35,000 of these death shields that have never been tested. The Boston Public Schools has not used them under the recommendations of the Massachusetts DOE. And unfortunately, Philadelphia has implemented these, and they will be serving breakfast and lunch. Again, even the CDC's release about the 3-foot distance that just came out, I can challenge that data. It's so far off and so obliviously wrong. The study that was done only accounted for 4,500 people that had positive cases. And if you look at the same amount of people in a different state like Utah, there was over 15,000 more people testing positive. So all their data is minute to me, it means nothing. That whole three foot report that everybody's relying off of. So again, schools are safe to go to, but adding these acrylic plexiglass shields, in my opinion, doubles or triples cases. So I wish someone on the board would speak up, and I wish Dr. Malash would make a public comment on all the data that I'm supplying him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Next, we have Stephanie.
Oh, hi, Stephanie Graff, 514 Queen Anne Road. Just a couple questions. Now that, I mean, our kids are back in school and the teachers are back in school, I am curious as to when the board meetings, when everyone will be back in person and not half remote. And I spoke about this last month, but I am still concerned that board member Ms. Tong her video was on for probably 20 minutes of the entire meeting tonight. And I don't think a board member who can't show her video should be allowed to vote. I just have a problem if we can't, as a community member, see that someone is paying attention to the entire part of the meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Graff. Okay, I will hand it over to Ms. Sugars for any submitted comments.
First one I have is from Colleen Spagnuolo. As neighboring districts move to a full day in-person instruction, we urge Cherry Hill to do the same. Implementing lunch and recess back into the day will normalize and create beneficial social interaction and engagement. Moving to 5 full days now will help the district regain trust in the community and help the district troubleshoot for a smoother transition in the fall. We want to rejoin the Cherry Hill Public School District in the fall, but we are concerned that full day will not be implemented in the fall if it cannot be done before the end of the current school year. Next comment is from Jeffrey Podowitz. If you Googled SFRA district profile and clicked on the link that would take you to the Education Law Center website, and on the graphs searched for Cherry Hill School District, you would find one of the graphs, required state aid for 1 year was $44.3 million versus actual state of $12.7 million, over $31 million difference. For the year before, you will see an actual state aid of $12.7 million versus a required state aid of $37.2 million. That is over $56.1 million difference in state aid over a period of 2 years. State aid that is supported by our community state income tax dollars that go into a property tax relief fund. We, like Chesterfield, are living a financial nightmare. The article about Chesterfield School District says why they are being cheated by the state. So are we, except we have been cheated for 30 years. The article emphasizes how high Chesterfield's property taxes are. They have so few commercial properties with around 800 students. They are a small school district, so there is no economy of scale. Go to the user-friendly budget for 2020-21 on the NJDOE website. Chesterfield's estimated equalized general tax fund tax rate without repayment of debt was 1.1946. If you go to the Northern Burlington County Regional School District, you will find that Chesterfield's estimated equalized general fund tax rate without repayment of debt for that 7th through 12th grade district was 0.6567, total 1.8513. That is high. The article was sympathetic. Our Cherry Hill district's estimated 2021 estimated equalized general fund tax rate without repayment of debt is 2.0631. Excuse me. Or around 1.1% or around 11% higher, or around an extra $2 per $1,000 of assessed property valuation. Next comment is from Kimberly Strumsky. We urge Cherry Hill to move toward 5 full days now. This will allow time to work out the kinks, to problem solve and plan what is working and what may need to be adapted, especially around the lunch period 1 year into the coronavirus. And we still, as parents, have no metrics as to what will get us open normally 5 full days. What will be different in September that will not be in place come April or May. We are afraid that if this is not attempted in this school year, and I don't see a reason why it cannot be, that just like a multiple other times, the rug will be pulled out from under us come September, whether it be a space issue, a contractual issue with teachers, the teachers union, or staffing needs. This move will build confidence and trust in the community that the set plan to move forward with 5 full days will actually come to fruition, unlike the other plans before. Excuse me. Also, as a parent of a younger learner who is attempting to really build the foundation for the basics of reading, writing, and math, We should not hesitate to provide as much learning as possible and not chalk it off to let's just wait till the new school year. All learning to help close this learning gap is appreciated and needed. This will allow for increased consistency and decreased financial burdens for families whose work is not half a day. A more normal and consistent routine with an available instructor during learning may also help improve the anxiety of both children and their parents and guardians. Gary Levenbach for College Lane. Today I'm writing strongly to encourage the school district to accelerate the return to full 5 days of live instruction, at least at the elementary school level, if it cannot be done everywhere. I had commented previously on how the decision to remain in a hybrid model with shortened school days with a live and virtual mix does not take into account the ways in which children are harmed from the prolonged disruption to their education and how research consistently shows these harms are exceeding the benefits to children and the community from the current learning model. With the CDC guidelines for social distancing reduced to 3 feet and the current safety measures in place in our schools, I do not feel like the administration and school board have adequately communicated yet to families what still is necessary to allow for the return of children to the classroom for 5 full days of live instruction shortly after spring break that will no longer be an obstacle next fall. To the extent that the ability to have kids eat lunch in classrooms or other areas on school property is restricted in any way due to collectively bargained lunch breaks, I implore the district and the Cherry Hill Education Association to make temporary adjustments now that reflect the best interests of the children. Offering a basic education to our children should not be compromised because of lunchtime employment rules that never contemplated the ways in which a pandemic would change how kids need to eat lunch at school. There are creative solutions available to protect most of a lunch break for teachers while allowing children to eat on school grounds, especially with spring and warmer weather on its way. Please get the kids back into school for 5 full days of instruction this academic year. Proving it can be done now will give you more credibility with families when you talk about what you are planning to do next fall. Many families are judging your actions in support of our children over the next few weeks as they consider fall education options and their willingness to provide financial support for much needed facility improvements to our buildings in the near future. Jill Ginsburg and Justin Miller, my kids have been so much happier since returning to 4 days a week at school. Why is Monday still a remote day? Since every day is a cleaning day, we've been told and both cohorts are back at school. Why exactly are we still wasting another 4 hours of school of a week at home where there's only 16 hours of school total? We would like to see the kids return to 5 full days before the end of the year. Why? Simply because we need to see what improvement and what works. Will staggered lunchtimes work, eating outside when the weather allows it? We need to see all the components and how they fit together in order for the fall return to learn to go smoothly. Nothing was attempted last summer and therefore school didn't start until November and then only a few weeks before closing down again. This cannot happen again. These kids need to be back at school on a regular schedule, including lunch and recess. Conversing with neighboring districts and seeing how they troubleshoot now in the spring for the last few months will be extremely beneficial for a fall smooth transition too. I have 4 identical comments from Steve Tulo, Dr. Marcus Zabrauer, Zoe and Jeff Zangrilli, and Kimberly Gallagher. As neighboring districts move to full day in-person instruction, we urge for Cherry Hill to do the same, implementing lunch and recess back into the day will normalize and create beneficial social interaction and engagement. Moving to full 5 days now will help the district regain trust in the community and help the district troubleshoot for a smoother transition in fall. That is the end of my public comments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sugars. Okay, we do not have any items for second executive session. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. I will go ahead and make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack? All in favor? Great, thank you. Have a good evening.
Night all.
Everyone.